Wales, as well as the south and southwest. It's a fine end to the day and continuing to feel warm even as the sun goes down. Now, the cloud in the east, it's a fickle beast. It'll come and go through the night time. Some of it will appear across the Midlands, perhaps reach parts of East Wales and central southern England. So, yeah, some patchy cloud here and there overnight. And as we wake up on Friday, a few places will be overcast, I suspect. It will also feel cool with that brisk breeze continuing down the North Sea coast. But most of the cloud will retreat back to the beaches of eastern England as well as the northeast of Scotland. It's cloud-free skies elsewhere and under the sunshine, high UV levels, but also high temperatures, 22 or 23 Celsius in the southwest. Again, mid-teens in that east coast.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News traffic and travel report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users on the M25 anti-clockwise between junctions 28 and 27 should anticipate lengthy delays due to an incident with multiple cars and 2 lanes closed. In Portsmouth, the M27 eastbound between junctions 11 and 12 has an accident causing lane closures and hour-long delays. In Devon, congestion on the A30 westbound between the A375 and the junction with the M5 leads to a 15-minute delay today. And on the trains, London Overground services face major disruptions, with no trains between Watford Junction and Willesden Junction. Merseyrail has a reduced service between Moorfields and Ormskirk. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News traffic and travel report.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Ranjit Mathrani. Ranjit, welcome to the show. You're being booted out by the Crown Estate. What's going on?
Well, the answer is I don't know, because they keep on giving different reasons on different occasions with one simple objective, to get us out of the premises. And the irony is that 1 year before they decided not to terminate our lease, they actually invited us to take over more space on the first floor of the restaurant. And then they dramatically changed their mind. I'm sorry about the background noise, I'm the evidence. They dramatically changed their mind after a locked drain, which they blamed on us, which wiped out their electrics. And they claim they needed space, 11 square meters of the space for their entrance. On other occasions, they claim they need the space in order to do the refurbishment works. Neither of those arguments are very convincing. They could have a reception space if they wanted to on the first floor, and they could work around us, as many landlords have done in refurbishing the offices.
So Ranjit, if I may interject, Ranjit, if I may interject, we don't have a great deal of time left. Ostensibly, they're trying to hike up your rent, and you think they're using a backdoor method of doing so to get you out. You're an institution in London.
We are indeed an institution. Not only that, we are a living institution. You know, we were invited to cater for the Queen on 2 occasions, but in Paris, she in fact agreed to have dinner with us before COVID struck.
GB News.
Good morning. It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 15th of May, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, have we found a shared migrant solution? The Prime Minister is in Albania this morning to launch yet another crackdown on people smugglers. We will have that story as it evolves.
The last Conservative government failed to reckon with the reality of a rising prison population.
The Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood pledges to build 3 new prisons to fight overcrowding, but we're being warned lives will be put at risk with the early release of sexual offenders and violent criminals.
And it seems that we may still be in a trans children crisis. There are more kids wanting gender care, waiting times are up, and the NHS is still offering treatments to what they call trans toddlers.
Slaughter and capture of innocent Israelis on October the 7th. And
which was awful, which was truly awful.
And but that full context needs to be there when discussing what's going on.
But that's not the full context, is it?
Own goal for Gary Lineker. He's finally apologised for sharing a pro-Palestine video featuring an anti-Semitic rat emoji. But of course he hasn't been sacked by the BBC.
And Putin is snubbing the peace talks. The Russian president will not attend the first direct meeting between Moscow and Kyiv in 3 years. Donald Trump is also giving it a miss.
Nanny State Britain, of the 29 European countries on the Nanny State Index, will reveal where the United Kingdom ranks.
So we've got a combination this morning of a lot of breaking news. We're going to be taking, I believe, some Keir Starmer this morning as well on this immigration. We know a lot of you will be bothered about that issue.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say.
First, though, here's Aaron Armstrong with the news.
Thanks very much. Good morning to you. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. The Prime Minister's in Albania as he prepares to announce an expanded crackdown on smuggling gangs. Sir Keir Starmer will meet the Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, later. They'll hope to agree measures to clamp down on illegal migration and organised crime. He is seeking to collaborate with other European countries on his pledge to stop the boats. The government is also looking to further plans to send failed asylum seekers to return hubs in Balkan countries. Now, it's understood the UK will supply drones and will share intelligence with security services in North Macedonia and Montenegro to tackle people smuggling. More than 12,000 people have crossed the channel in small boats since the beginning of the year, which is a record number.
I want to see much stronger action taken across the piece here, whether it's arrests, seizing of assets, stopping people getting in boats, making sure that where people do get through, we return them. We've had maximum number of 24,000 people have been returned under this government. That's the highest record for nearly a decade. We've got to keep bearing down on this issue.
However, the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, says it's clear that much more needs to be done.
12,000 illegal migrants coming across the channel this year. That's a record this year under this government that said it was going to be reversing that. And on net migration, we need to see the government go much further.
The Chancellor's welcomed new figures that show the economy's grown by more than expected in the first 3 months of the year. She's been meeting workers and giving an address at the Rolls-Royce factory in Derby this morning. New figures show GDP increased by 0.7% between January and March, slightly stronger than economic forecasts. The slight increases represent the period, though, directly before President Trump launched his global trade tariffs. One we hope to be hearing from the Chancellor a little bit later. Now, Vladimir Putin has not been included on a list of Kremlin officials who will engage in peace talks with Ukraine today. The Russian president was the one who proposed the talks in Turkey, but it's understood a low-level Russian delegation has arrived instead, despite Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky having challenged Putin to meet face-to-face. The Russian president, as I mentioned, proposed those talks in place of the 30-day ceasefire that's been demanded by Zelensky. Well, Donald Trump says he may travel to Istanbul on Friday if progress is made, but he's currently in Qatar on the third day of his tour of the Middle East. And at the moment, it seems he has no plans to go. The US president has increased pressure on both sides to agree a temporary cessation to the fighting that continues to cause death and destruction across Ukraine. There is some doubt now as to whether the talks will actually go ahead later or indeed if they will be tomorrow. And a report into the sinking of a luxury yacht that killed 7 people last summer has found the vessel capsized because of high winds and vulnerabilities in its design. The tech billionaire Mike Lynch was amongst those who died when the Bayesian sank off the coast of Sicily in August last year. It had the second tallest sailing mast ever built. Well, the report says vulnerabilities to high winds that were either unknown to the owner or the crew contributed to its sinking. Investigators say the yacht was knocked to a 90-degree angle within 15 seconds when it was hit by winds in excess of 70 miles an hour. Those are the headlines. Much more coming up at the top of the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. I had a couple of days off this week. It's GCSE week, of course. I've been ferrying my teenager around. And also, if you've got a child or a grandchild who's doing GCSE maths this morning, my thoughts are with you. Right, moving on.
Just a thought, it all comes flooding back, doesn't it? Oh, dear.
Yeah, she's doing very well. She's very self-sufficient. I think the boys can be a bit of a challenge at this age. No offence, I know it's a bit sexist. The girls tend to pick up their protractors and the compass and the calculator and go out the door like she did this morning.
Very good, very good. Now, front page of the Telegraph today, extraordinary story. I thought this had all been stopped.
With the
Had
Cass
something
Review.
called the Cass Review, which was last March, April. A very accomplished paediatrician, Baroness Cass, who effectively said, we've got to stop giving children who think they might be trans, rushing them into treatment, avoiding them having pills that can change their body. And now it seems the NHS is still treating nursery-age children. Nursery age. These are toddlers who believe they're transgender. Now, they're not giving them any drugs, but the mere idea, why are mum and dad even going along with it?
It's things like a boy that wants to wear dresses and
let
play
him.
with dolls.
Let him.
It's things like a girl who wants to kick a football and maybe have her hair short. And the problem is, I think the parents are the ones behind this, obviously. You either say, this is normal and children play around with gender roles as they have done since the beginning of time. You don't march them off to the doctor and get their heads looked at by a psychiatrist. And why are they doing it? Well, because they are reading that it's normal now, they're confused, they lack confidence as parents to say no.
Well, apparently, the Health Service had set a minimum age of 7 for children to be seen by specialist gender clinics. I think that's too young, frankly.
Unbelievable.
7, far too young. Claiming anything else less was just too young. But that limit's now been removed after the proposal was put up to consultation. And you know why? Because the wretched trans lobby have lobbied and put pressure on the NHS. So you've now got 3-year-olds being talked to about their gender. For God's sake, what are we doing to our children?
Before the Tavistock Clinic was closed, it baffles me, they were seeing 3 new children under 7 every month. That means there are 3 families with children under 7 who thought it was normal to take their child to a clinic for advice on their gender.
Look, I don't like banning anything, but I'm sorry, I think the law's got to be changed. This should be banned.
Any kind of indulgence of any sort of psychological assessment of it?
Of toddlers, in particular, and children under the age of 7, it should be banned. It should be against the law.
You know what?
I just don't trust it. They're filling their heads with terrible... they're just too young for this stuff.
Children are so suggestible, but clearly there's a generation of parents who are also incredibly suggestible. So where are the other adults in those parents' lives? And what I mean by that is health visitors, teachers, GPs. They must meet a number of adults, grandparents. They must meet a number of adults on that journey. Why aren't those adults in positions of advice and maybe authority able to say to them, just go home, and if your son wants to play with dolls, that's OK, just let him. But everybody's frightened still to say the wrong thing.
It's shocking, frankly, shocking. And I wonder what you think, if you agree with us.
Yeah.
There's a statement from the Department of Health which says we are working with NHS England. I thought that had been abolished. It's being abolished, but it's still with us, of course. We're working with NHS England.
I think we've lost your mic for a minute. We're working with NHS England to reform children's gender services in line with the recommendations from the Cass Review to provide children with timely, holistic support. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is in Albania this morning as he prepares to announce a further crackdown on illegal migrant smuggling gangs. It marks the first official visit to the country by a UK Prime Minister, and he's going to be speaking to our political editor, Christopher Hope, on GB News very soon. But joining us now is crossbench peer Lord David Alton. Good morning to you, Lord Alton. Now, what might we expect, do you think, the Prime Minister to announce the benefits to us, frankly, by having a closer relationship with Albania on this issue?
Well, clearly this is a global issue. It's not something that can be resolved merely in London, in Whitehall or Westminster. So it's right that the Prime Minister should be building up relationships, not least with those countries from whom some of the illegal migrants, and Albania has been one of those countries, have been coming from. Look, 120 million people are displaced in the world today, and unless we get to grips with the fundamental reasons why people are displaced, then this is going to go on and on and on. You take a country like Sudan, for instance, where the almost unreported war has taken hundreds of thousands of lives, displaced millions of people, and of course, young families with children, they flee for their lives. They often die on the journeys out. We have to deal with the root causes, and that's got to be a collaborative effort between all the great democracies. It's actually in the interests of the disruptors, those who want to destroy our democracies, to displace people. We have to tackle things like the causes of war, the corruption that you encounter, and the turf wars that take place inside countries such as Sudan. People have got to realise that unless we tackle those root causes, this is never going to end. So I welcome the fact the Prime Minister is in Albania. This should not become a partisan question. It's something that we have got to face together. It's one of the great crises facing the world.
Lord Dawn, do you see, I mean, the conversations he's going to have in Albania, this is about, in a sense, trying to get to grips with the criminal gangs. But you're talking about something far more fundamental.
I am, and although the Joint Committee on Human Rights, which I have the privilege of chairing, it's a joint committee of both houses of Parliament. It comprises members from all of the different political traditions and none. Yesterday, we were taking evidence about the new Borders Bill that the government have introduced. There's only so much that legislation can do. It's got to be a combined political effort, and I think that people who have ignored this problem, and sadly that has been the case, I think that people have hoped it would suddenly just go away. Others have seen it as an issue that they can do some dog whistling about. Look, it's far more important than that. We have to have a united approach to this and try and tackle root causes, as well as the illegal gangs and the migrants who come to this country who have no right to be here. But we also have to be compassionate. And for instance, one of the things you asked me to talk about this morning is the report we issued this week about the children of British nationals who are in camps in Syria and Iraq, and who everyone has turned away from. If it weren't for the work of a brave British journalist, Alex Crawford, who went into those camps and saw these children there festering and probably going to be used in the future by ISIS and organisations like them, then there would be no political will to do anything about it. So I was particularly pleased that this report was issued just 2 days ago, a unanimous report from our committee, members from both houses of Parliament and from most of the political traditions, calling for something to be done about these things, not least to bring to justice those who were responsible, British citizens who went to Syria and who went to Iraq in the first place, murdered some 5,000 Yazidis, and who raped and pillaged 2,500 women and girls were enslaved. 1,000 of them are still disappeared, and none of those British citizens who did those things were brought to justice. And unless we get real about these things, of course, we're going to see this kind of turbulence that the Prime Minister is having to deal with this morning on a different front.
And it would be a wonderful world if we could go and solve all the issues of these countries. But in terms of the war in Sudan, we don't have any agency, do we, David, to go over and solve those sorts of issues? And it's certainly not where the political leanings of the British people are right now.
Well, the instance I've just given you about ISIS and what they did in Syria and Iraq has had ramifications for us in the United Kingdom, but these were British citizens that we're talking about, 400 of whom have returned to the United Kingdom, not one of whom has been brought to trial in the United Kingdom for the atrocities that they committed. So this isn't a bleeding heart liberal approach. This is an approach based on the rule of law. And unless we get real about these things and recognise that these borders, our borders, aren't the place where all these things stop, we have to do more with our neighbours to try and resolve these issues. I don't like this idea that somehow this has got nothing to do with us. In this particular instance, it has a great deal to do with people who came from this country.
And Lord Alton, just very briefly on that, the 400 you mentioned who were fighting for ISIS on the wrong side are now back in Britain. We don't even know where they are in Britain, let alone them not being prosecuted. We don't know where they are.
Andrew, that's absolutely right. And in our report, we draw out that point. We took evidence from the Metropolitan Police. We took evidence from the Home Office. We looked carefully. We talked to Alex Crawford, the journalist I referred to before. She's just made a documentary about this. When you have the Foreign Office saying it's too dangerous to go into these camps to collect the data, don't even know how many British children are festering in these places, how is it possible, as she said herself in her evidence to us, for a young journalist to be able to go in, do interviews, collect data, when it's not possible for British officials to do it?
Interesting, fascinating, and a slightly different nuanced take on the issue. We really appreciate your time this morning. Crossbench peer Lord David Alton there.
It's fascinating, isn't it? 400 of these terrible people,
yeah,
IS fighters, somewhere in Britain. Could be in your street.
And he's so right about the fact that the mess of the world...
Yeah.
We need to go to the source to stop people from Sudan wanting to come and live here. But as I said,
It all began, I'm afraid, with Blair's mad war in Iraq.
We caused all of this. We pushed over the first domino, which is leading so many people to want to come and live in this country. But unfortunately, we cannot find a home for everyone.
Certainly can't. Now, up next, find out where Britain falls on the league table of nanny state countries in Europe.
That's right. It's fascinating. You do not want to miss it. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here are the temperatures in Europe.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Whilst widespread sunny skies return to the UK, rain clears Italy but pushes into Greece, where it will become increasingly windy by Friday. Fairly breezy for the Canaries, but mostly fine here with partly cloudy skies across Spain, Portugal into Gibraltar. 1 or 2 showers, otherwise plenty of sunshine. But for Italy, it's been very unsettled here, particularly in the south. We do have the rain and the wind pushing now into Greece, where it will be unsettled for a few days before turning brighter later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying. That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, what happened was the Queen didn't strip Harry and Meghan of their HRH titles because that would have been unnecessarily unkind. But she asked them, please do not use these. You keep them, but don't use them. And what she meant by that was don't use them in any public way whatsoever. So do not, have your luggage labels HRH, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and don't have your writing paper. They have their coat of arms. They are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but not with the HRH. I think that Meghan is very lucky to still have hers.
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways she is, absolutely. But it doesn't seem to be any self-awareness, does there, with this podcast? It's all about woe betide me. It was all so difficult. We were in the trenches after we got married. And if we all cast our minds back to that spectacular day where they had everything in front of them, the world was watching, the world was celebrating, everyone was on team Meghan and Harry. But it's only now that she's in California living her best life that she's able to have her honeymoon, apparently. What do you make of it, Ingrid?
I can't believe she could say such crazy things. I mean, if she wants to maintain some semblance of popularity, she's got to be a little bit more humble. And what she could have easily said, the wedding was absolutely stupendous and it was wonderful and the British people were so welcoming, but sadly it didn't work out. I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to say that, even if she didn't mean it. I just think that she is sometimes remarkably stupid.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
(9:50) Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
You are so clever at home. There are things that you spot sometimes that Andrew and I in the moment will forget. And Helen has pointed out memory failure. Lord Alton, David Lammy has just given £120 million to Sudan, and we spray taxpayers' money over the rest of the world too. A lot of you were angry to hear Lord Alton say we're never going to solve the migration issue in this country unless we solve the problems in other people's country.
And there's a war there too. What's it to do with us?
He would say it's to do with us because all of the people fleeing. And if you watch Patrick Christie's show, which I did with him earlier in the week, when was that? Tuesday night? Actually, the people that he was talking to, a lot of them were Sudanese.
Yeah, we have got to stop sticking our nose in other countries' affairs and thinking we know best. Think Iraq, think Afghanistan, and think the impact it's had on this country.
Davis said, Lord Alton is talking a load of rubbish. Sorry, my lord. And is too full of his own importance. The world is an unsafe place for many, and greed and false religions are often behind the problem. His first job is to convince all people to behave responsibly. Why is he talking to us? Get off your own backside, get out there and start converting the world. Then we will support you. Well, he would say, of course, that he is doing his best to help issues across the world. And this issue that we were just discussing at the top of the show about whether children, toddlers, should be given treatment with psychologists for their potential trans issues. Jackie says, I was born and raised in the 60s, female, and was totally what you would call a tomboy. I hated dresses, hated dolls. I was better at football than the boys, but it was banned for females then. I was playing football on Turnham Green one day, know it well, in the school holidays back in London. My nan was standing watching and saw a man looking at me. He said to her, don't worry, I've seen worse, playing for Brentford. He was a Brentford scout. Fantastic, who are now, of course, in the Premier League.
Now, of course, it's time for our great giveaway, the biggest to date, with your chance to win a lovely motorhome worth over £67,000, which I can tell you Beverly Turner covets every day.
I do.
You also get £5,000 tax-free cash. One lucky viewer will win it, or listener. Here's all the details you need.
Great Britain is ready for you to explore this summer, and there's still plenty of time to grab this fabulous family motorhome. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, the Elnag Baron 560 comfortably sleeps 4, has integrated bathroom and kitchen spaces, and plenty of storage for all of the things you'd need to bring along on your next adventure. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that anywhere you visit in your brand new motorhome is done in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go straight to the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. High pressure is now returning across the whole of the UK, having seen scattered thundery downpours in the last few days. That means widespread sunny skies and feeling warm in the sunshine, but it will be a little cloudier and cooler in places. Certainly first thing, some cloud across central and southern parts of the UK. That tends to retreat back to the east coast by the afternoon. And on that east coast, it's always going to feel a lot cooler because of the wind from the North Sea and the low cloud that will come and go through the afternoon. 12 to 15 Celsius from eastern Scotland down to Norfolk. But elsewhere where we've got sunshine, high teens, low 20s, top temperatures something like 23 Celsius, South Wales or southwest England. And we keep the widespread clear skies as we end the day. Certainly virtually unbroken clear blue skies across Scotland as we go into the afternoon and early evening. Northern Ireland, barely a cloud in sight, likewise for northwest England. But for the east coast, you can see that patchy cloud persisting into the evening. Wales, as well as the south and southwest, it's a fine end to the day and continuing to feel warm even as the sun goes down. Now, the cloud in the east, it's a fickle beast. It'll come and go through the night time. Some of it will appear across the Midlands, perhaps reach parts of East Wales and central southern England. So, yeah, some patchy cloud here and there overnight. And as we wake up on Friday, a few places will be overcast, I suspect. It will also feel cool with that brisk breeze continuing down the North Sea coast. But most of the cloud will retreat back to the beaches of eastern England as well as the northeast of Scotland. It's cloud-free skies elsewhere and under the sunshine, high UV levels, but also high temperatures, 22 or 23 Celsius in the southwest. Again, mid-teens in that east coast.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Expect heavy delays on the M6 northbound between junctions 31A and 32 due to a road incident. 3 lanes are closed, causing 50 minutes of delay. The A470 to Upper Boat is closed for maintenance. In Greater London, an accident on the M25 anti-clockwise between junctions 28 and 27 has led to 2 lanes closed. Hampshire's A27 eastbound exit slip to the A3023 has a broken down vehicle with 1 lane shut. And on the trains, London Overground services are suspended between Watford Junction and Willesden Junction, and Merseyrail runs reduced service between Moorfields and Ormskirk. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
That's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GB News.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
p.m. on Thursday, the 15th of May, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Shared migration solution. The Prime Minister is in Albania this morning to launch yet another crackdown on those people smugglers. Remember when they were going to smash the gangs? We'll have the latest for you.
The last Conservative government failed to reckon with the reality of a rising prison population.
That was Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood pledging to build 3 new prisons to fight overcrowding. But we're also being warned to brace ourselves for the early release of sexual offenders and violent criminals.
Trans children crisis. Can you believe it? There are more kids wanting gender care, waiting times are up, and the NHS is offering treatment to trans toddlers. Outrageous.
Slaughter and capture of innocent Israelis on October the 7th. And
which was awful, which was truly awful.
And that full context needs to be there when discussing what's going on.
But that's not the full context, is it?
Own goal for Gary Lineker, who's apologised for sharing a pro-Palestinian video featuring an anti-Semitic trope of a rat emoji. He hasn't been sacked by the BBC. Should celebrities stay out of politics? We're going to be debating it.
And Putin has snubbed those peace talks. The Russian president is not going to be there for that meeting between Moscow and Kiev, the first one in 3 years. Donald Trump is also giving it a miss.
And this is such an interesting story. Of the 29 European countries on the Nanny State Index, we will tell you where the United Kingdom now sits. And we should say what we mean by the nanny state. What that means is the government meddling in your life, the detail, what you eat, what you drink, what you can do, what you can smoke, etc.
What they can advertise on TV and radio and at what time.
Yeah.
And you won't be surprised to know we are very, very high up on that league table.
And the justification for nanny state, for government intervention, is always, oh, we've got to keep you safe, we've got to keep you alive. You don't know whether you should smoke a cigarette or not. That's up to us to decide. Well, we have some very interesting facts to reveal to you about the latest findings on that. Get in touch this morning, gbnews.com/you'll say. Here's Aaron with your news.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you. Just after 10 o'clock. Your headlines. The Prime Minister is in Albania as he prepares to announce an expanded crackdown on smuggling gangs. Sir Keir Starmer has met the Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, to agree measures to clamp down on illegal migration and organised crime. He is seeking to collaborate with other European countries on his pledge to stop the boats. The government is also looking to further plans to sail failed asylum seekers to return hubs in Balkan countries. Live pictures here from Albania, where, as I mentioned, Sir Keir Starmer is hoping to work together with those European countries. He's met security forces already this morning to see the technology they have to try to stop the gangs. It's understood the UK will supply drones and share intelligence with Balkan countries in an effort to tackle people smuggling. And more than 12,000 people have crossed the channel in small boats since the beginning of the year. A record number. That is Edi Rama there on the right of your picture. He is the Albanian Prime Minister, and they're due to have bilateral talks a little bit later this morning. Now, the Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride, he has been speaking about migration, illegal migration and net migration into the UK this morning, and he has told GB News more needs to be done.
12,000 illegal migrants coming across the channel this year. That's a record this year under this government that said it was going to be reversing that. And on net migration, we need to see the government go much further.
The Chancellor has welcomed new figures that show the economy's grown by more than expected in the first 3 months of the year. She's been meeting workers and giving an address at the Rolls-Royce factory in Derbyshire this morning. She's happy to see new figures that show GDP increased by 0.7% between January and March, slightly stronger than forecasts had predicted. However, the good news may only be temporary, as household bills and businesses will be rising, and that began in April, so we'll have to see what the next quarterly figures look like. The Chancellor says it proves the government is moving in the right direction, but accepts there's more to do.
We're set to be the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first 3 months of this year. And that's incredibly welcome. But I know that there is more to do. The cost of living crisis continues to affect families right across our country. I understand that and I hear that. But despite the challenges that we face, our economy is strong.
Vladimir Putin has not been included on a list of Kremlin officials who will engage in peace talks with Ukraine scheduled for today. The Russian president proposed the peace talks in Turkey, but it's understood a low-level delegation has arrived in his absence. This despite Ukraine's President Zelensky having challenged Putin to meet face-to-face to agree a 30-day ceasefire. Well, that hasn't happened. Donald Trump's been putting pressure on both of them. He may travel to Istanbul on Friday if some progress in those talks is made. He's currently in Qatar on the third day of his tour of the Middle East. He tries to increase investment into the US. Now, Trump has been increasing pressure on both sides to agree a temporary cessation to the fighting that continues to cause death and destruction across Ukraine. Police searching for the parents of 3 newborn babies abandoned over an 8-year period say they've narrowed the search down to just 400 homes in East London. Officers have been door knocking at a number of properties in East Ham and Plaistow in East London in an attempt to uncover information which may lead to the identification of the mother of the children. Police have asked the public for voluntary DNA samples and for anyone to come forward with information. They say they cannot discount a 4th baby being found as time goes on. Now, the 3 babies, named Harry, Roman and Elsa, were found abandoned in 2017, 2019 and 2024, respectively, within a few miles of each other in the east of the capital. We will be hearing from police later. They say the mother may not have the free will to come forward. A report into the sinking of a luxury yacht that killed 7 people last summer has found the vessel capsized because of high wind and vulnerabilities in its design. The tech billionaire Mike Lynch was amongst those who died when the Bayesian sank off the coast of Sicily in August. It had the 2nd tallest sailing mast ever built. Well, the report says vulnerabilities to high winds that were unknown to either the owner or the crew may have contributed to its sinking. Investigators say the yacht was knocked to a 90-degree angle within 15 seconds when it was hit with wind in excess of 70 miles per hour. And some good news for you. Pubs will be allowed to stay open until 1 a.m. if England or Wales reach the semi-finals or the final of the UEFA Women's European Championships, the Euros. So closing put back then from 11 p.m. So fans who often start the party in the fan parks and the pubs earlier in the day can get together to celebrate the final stages of the Women's Euros. You may remember that England are the defending champions, having won the Euros back in 2022. Perhaps we will see the repeat of both of those scenes, not just players celebrating, but also 6 or 7 pints in a pyramid balanced on a clever person's head. Well, that's it for me. I'll be back with more at the top of the next hour. In fact, I'll be back with more at 10:30.
Welcome back to Smith's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev, back together. Had a couple of days off this week, but we are delighted to be here with you this morning. Let's see what you've been saying at home. Anthony says, we're not here to police the whole world. We tried that once, and look what happened. Let's get everything working perfectly here before we try to fix it anywhere else.
Well, that would make a change, wouldn't it? I mean, we're still spending billions on international aid.
Yeah.
Billions.
That was almost the argument of Lord David Alston at the start of the show, wasn't it? To say that we cannot stop migration to these countries until we solve what is happening in those countries. It's wonderfully utopian, and I wish him the best with that.
Yeah, and you see, the 120 million we sent to Sudan, how do we know it's not just going to go into the hands of the military to prolong the war?
Drive around in Land Cruisers. It's really difficult, isn't it? Jack has said, just watching the Chancellor of the Exchequer, that's not what he describes her as, Rachel Reeves, of course, wooden as usual.
Is that Rachel from Accounts?
Andrew Pearce. Can the poor soul standing behind our Chancellor see the auto cue that she's reading from? Because if I was behind her, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to stop myself from laughing. Yeah. What did I say to you?
Exactly.
I said, I wish I was stood in that crowd.
But you would...
I'd be rolling my eyes.
Imagine if you work for a company... She's at Rolls-Royce, and so they say to people, lucky you, we're going to give you a bit of time off work. You're going to stand behind the Chancellor and be filmed while she talks to the nation. You'd want to say, no thanks, I don't want to take part in this political PR propaganda gimmick. Or you would blow raspberries.
You might get the sack if they invited the Chancellor Exchequer into your company and you stood in the background blowing raspberries at Andrew. That's probably a sackable
it would be
effect.
very tempting.
That's why you and I will never be allowed near any of those events.
No. But I think if she spotted me, she wouldn't. She'd know there was trouble.
And Jansky says the problems we're having with immigrants is that Margaret Thatcher warned us, do not get rid of the world's dictators. They control their own population.
They certainly do. Now, the Prime Minister is in Albania and he is with Edi Rama, the Albanian Prime Minister. Just look at the size of the Albanian Prime Minister. He is reputedly 6'7". Now, I think Keir Starmer's about 6 foot. He's just...
He dwarfs him.
He dwarfs him. And he's quite a figure, Edi Rama. He's a socialist, so Starmer would be very happy politically with him. And he's just won his 4th general election with more than half the vote.
He's been Prime Minister since 2013.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Eat your heart out, Keir, because you're not going to have that long in office, are you? So he's been in office for 12 years and he's just won a 4th term. So he's going to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's going to be like Putin.
We're going to be bringing you all of the... There are going to be facts emerging from that meeting this morning about our illegal migration situation, how we might deal with people, so stay tuned.
And remember, of course, Italy set up processing centres for illegal migrants to have for asylum seekers to have their cases processed in Albania. And, of course, in a year, they haven't managed to deport anybody because it's all got trapped in the courts.
Oh, dear. Maybe Starmer can bring that up over there.
Well, that happens in this country, doesn't it? Because we allow the European Court of Human Rights to meddle and interfere all the time.
Right, Britain, talking of meddling, is the 7th biggest nanny state in Europe, according to the annual Nanny State Index.
The UK has risen from 11th worst place in Europe to eat, drink, smoke, vape...
etc.
Exactly. Let's talk to the head of lifestyle economics at the IEA and author of the report, Christopher Snowdon. Christopher, morning to you, I suspect we are relentlessly heading towards the top 3 because we're going to have all this advertising in place soon about when you can and can't advertise certain types of food, more plans probably to have yet another sugar tax. So we're at 7th. It's going to get worse, isn't it?
Almost certainly, yeah. I mean, there is some pretty stiff competition at the top of the table with places like Finland and Lithuania and Turkey, but I'd be surprised if we're not at least in the top 5 next time we do this, partly for the reasons you mentioned to do with food and soft drinks, but also things like the ban on disposable vapes coming up next month, the advertising restrictions for food, the generational tobacco ban. I'm going to have to create a completely new category for that one.
And Chris, let's just be really clear here what we mean about our definitions of this. Let's not presume too much on the part of people listening and watching this. What do you mean by the nanny state? How have you measured these descriptions?
So the criteria we look at, and we're looking basically at food, soft drinks, alcohol and nicotine products. We're looking at regulations and taxes introduced by the government specifically to deter adults from using these products. So we're not bothered about regulation per se, just regulation that has an adverse effect on consumers.
And the bit that I love the most about this report is the correlation between state intervention under the auspices of keeping us safe and health. What have you learned?
Well, there isn't one. So if you chart the anti-smoking policies against smoking rates, there's no correlation. You chart the anti-drinking policies against per capita alcohol consumption, there is no relationship. And overall, there's no relationship between a country's nanny state score and life expectancy. And it's always been like that, actually, ever since 2016. Even though you see some movement between the countries on the league table, there's never any correlation. So on the face of it, these policies aren't even doing what they're supposed to do.
So why... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, on food and drink in particular, Chris, there's all efforts to restrict this sort of advertising of certain food and drinks, and we have our sugar taxes, and yet 64% of this country is overweight, and we are the most obese country in Western Europe. So those nanny state interventions are not delivering the health outcomes that they intended either.
No, I mean, sugar taxes have never worked anywhere. We've got this big advertising ban, which is kind of unprecedented globally, actually, coming up in October. We'll see if that works. I'd be very surprised. These things generally don't work because they don't really understand the issue that they're trying to deal with. And with obesity in particular, it's really very difficult to change what people eat or how much they exercise. So I fear that governments, and not least this government, with Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer, they're going to just continue with an endless succession of bans and taxes in the hope that something works. Whereas, actual fact, when it comes to obesity, we kind of know what works. We just had the results of the new weight loss drug trial. So we have gotten a solution now, and it's interesting that a lot of people in public health are a bit sniffy about the weight loss drugs because they would rather persist with their own agenda.
We stay with us, Chris. We're just listening. Zelensky is arriving in Turkey for peace talks. At the moment, we know that Vladimir Putin isn't going to be there.
It's pretty low level because Trump's not going to be there, Putin's not going to be there. Putin is sending just junior officials. But it is the first direct face-to-face contact between Zelensky and the Kremlin for 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's a progress of a sort.
And one might reasonably assume that Putin can't be there because there's such a price on his head. Does he leave Moscow under any circumstances?
Well, there's international arrest warrants everywhere, but also assassins, bullets.
Exactly. So I know that the lack of Putin is being interpreted as him not taking these talks seriously. We presume that he's got his highest-ranking negotiating officials there to conduct these conversations. Donald Trump isn't there either, of course, and no doubt there will be an American representative who is there. We will bring you anything that we learn from this. Can we go back to Christopher?
Yeah.
Right, Chris. If governments know, presumably, that these interventionist measures aren't making us live any longer or keeping us any healthier, why do they enact them?
Money.
Well, yeah, very often. I mean, the most popular nanny state policies with governments are taxes, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, you have other things like plain packaging for tobacco and minimum pricing for alcohol, but they don't raise money for governments, and so they haven't caught on to anywhere near the same extent as something like sugar taxes or vape taxes. There's loads and loads of vape taxes now around Europe, and we've got one of those on the way next year. The traditional ones of alcohol duty and tobacco duty, which are very, very high in Britain, which is one of the reasons we're so high up the table. So, yeah, follow the money on that. We're talking many, many billions of pounds. And the very fact that they don't really work means that they're a pretty secure source of revenue for the government.
Yeah, brilliant, Chris. Thank you so much. I think it's fascinating. And every time we have anybody on now, any minister talking about a tax on this for our health, we can show him this report and tell him it's not going to make any difference.
We've got the fourth highest alcohol tax.
From the IEA. Thank you.
Fourth highest alcohol tax rates in Europe, second highest cigarette tax rates in Europe.
And yet we're unhealthy and we're dying sooner. Right, the Prime Minister has led tributes to the investigative journalist Andrew Norfolk, who has died aged 60. He
was an old colleague of mine when I was on The Times. He was chief investigative reporter for The Times, and it was Andrew who first exposed the scandal of the grooming gangs of Pakistani origin at a time when it was very, very... he endured a lot of flack, and it was very brave of him and The Times to break these stories.
Let's speak now to GBNews' reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, good morning. Some people watching this will never have heard of Andrew Norfolk, but why was his work so significant?
Well, Andrew Norfolk was a national hero. He spoke out on this issue and conducted fearless reporting when many others shied away, or showed, as one headline he wrote put it, a cowardly reluctance to engage with this crisis. Now, when the Labour MP Anne Cryer in Keighley in West Yorkshire raised concerns in 2003, Andrew Norfolk, like many others, thought that this was a far-right fantasy. He wrote one story about it at the time and moved on. But his journalistic instinct and his pursuit for justice meant that he came back to the story when he noticed an ongoing pattern. When the rest of the mainstream media and many people looked the other way, Andrew Norfolk dug in and conducted some really fearless reporting, months of painstaking court record research. He heard a news bulletin in August 2010 while driving up to Edinburgh for a long weekend. He describes the moment that he heard about a gang being convicted in Manchester, and that sort of kick-started a realisation and an urge to look into this more widely. Now, over several years, his reporting came up against a conspiracy of silence in Rotherham, and that was the first front page that the Times ran with in January of 2011, because despite all of the evidence he had gathered, the whistleblowers, the survivors, the harrowing testimony and the horrors in that South Yorkshire town of Rotherham, people there would not speak to him. Police officers, council leaders, even charities had this conspiracy of silence. But when Alexis J commissioned that report after the government stepped in, they did so after Rotherham Council had to react to years of unrelenting coverage from Andrew Norfolk and the Times newspaper, reporting that they had once briefed out chain victims from 1997 to 2013. So it was groundbreaking. It established a pattern which other reporters have followed elsewhere and have found to be more broadly a national crisis, not isolated to a few northern towns and cities. Today, GB News is reporting out in the west of the country. It's where I am today. I'm on my way to meet a survivor as part of our ongoing coverage of this crisis. And last night, when I heard of this news about Andrew's passing, so many survivors got in touch to share their memories of him, of course, but also their thanks and also their fears, because we need Andrew Norfolk. He knew so much, he shared so much, he exposed so much. And speaking to a mutual source who caught up with him in March, they told me that when they were sharing more information, Andrew told them, keep going, there is more to be done. And I'll just say one more final thing, Bev and Andrew. That conspiracy of silence that Andrew Norfolk faced is still ongoing. Last month, we revealed that a police officer was faced with arrest when he shared details of trafficking in Bradford. Now, we did not hear back from Bradford Council when we went to them with our concerns. I think that the crisis in West Yorkshire will dwarf that of Rotherham, but still, that silence continues.
All right, that's Charlie Peters, thanks for that, talking about the untimely death of Andrew Norfolk, who was only 60. He collapsed just ahead of a routine health check. I used to sit virtually next to him at the time for many years. He was a really great guy.
What a shame.
Very
it's
modest.
Really, really sad. The internet is awash this morning with other journalists particularly saying how fantastic he is, he was, which is marvellous, and he clearly was. But I also think, well, where were all these journalists when he was trying to break a story and they were all scurrying away? And also the Prime Minister has led tributes to him as a brave and tenacious journalist to expose the grooming gangs. But obviously, some people will find that perhaps a little shallow, given that the Keir Starmer will not have a full inquiry into what happened.
Quite. And he was Director of Public Prosecutions during a lot of when this was going on.
Exactly.
Now, still ahead, Donald Trump is about to address US troops at an airbase in Qatar. Don't miss it. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Say that Mia Collins joins us in the studio now. Morning, Mia. Really good to meet you. And what's it like for you watching that experience back?
Lots of fond memories. I loved my time in the process, and, you know, TV shopping was definitely one of the big highlights for me. I loved it.
Was it really?
Genuinely, I really, really enjoyed it.
Because I wonder
good fun.
how much of these challenges and tasks do you come away from thinking, oh, that was awful?
For me personally, there weren't many occasions where I thought, oh, God, you know, what I've been able to do now is look back on all 10 episodes, and I'm actually really happy with my performance, so no regrets.
Consistently strong.
Thank you.
That's why I was so shocked when you went out as number 6. I honestly thought you'd make it through to the final, but it was just that one mistake, wasn't it?
It was the wrong decision at the wrong time. Had it been another task, maybe I would have survived it through, but, you know, it's so difficult to get to that final 5, and Jordan and Anissa are really strong candidates, so I think I just drew the short straw.
I mean, did you go into it thinking this would help you as a business person, or is it a door to get into media, or I mean, what was the point of going on?
I think if you look at the general age of candidates nowadays, it's a younger audience, and I've grown up watching the show. So from my perspective, I'd always just grown up watching it, thinking, God, I really do think I could do that. I am in the midst of prep for my bodybuilding competitions, so my time is very centred around training and trying to get as much content and insight into that as much as I can. I think bodybuilding is one of those sports that not many people know all too much about, and I think there's a few misconceptions of it. So if I can educate people and bring correct information about the sport through means that I enjoy, then so be it. And whatever comes of it, comes of it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
They don't want to do
Andrew Pierce, you're on the TV. This is
Carol Malone,
Newsroom.
of course.
Carol Malone is here, and also Andy Williams.
I was distracted.
Good morning.
Talking in my ear.
We're
We're
catching up on gossip.
Now then, so let's talk about, Carol, another Labour plan to go soft on criminals.
Do you know what? This is astonishing. So this week it was announced that criminals will only serve a third of their sentence, which is pitiful enough. And then yesterday we're told that the recall system for people who spit on that and commit crimes as soon as they get out, the recall is only going to be 28 more days in prison, which is...
This includes sex offenders and violence.
Yes, and they said, remember, they said they were never going to let those people out, and they did let all of those people out. So now if you break the terms of your release, you get another 28 days, which will probably be half as well. They'll probably let you out after a few. And this is, we've got this woman, Shabana Mahmood, presiding over a total breakdown in law and order. Where is the justice for people who've been victims of crime?
I agree.
There is no, our whole system seems to be focused on the people who commit crime and their needs and their wants, but not on the victims of crime. So now if you commit a rape, which you tend to get about 3 or 4 years for, you're going to be out in a year. So what price is a woman, in this society?
And the conviction rate is incredibly low for
low
rape and
anyway,
sexual assault,
exactly
as we know. But I have to take issue with your characterisation, Carol. This is Labour cleaning up the mess of the last 15 years. I know people are bored of hearing. Yes, because under the Tory government and the coalition before...
Do you know how many prisons the Tories built?
They built 13,000 places and closed 12,500, so that's a net gain of 500.
Prisons they built.
Nothing.
With plans more for 2, and the Labour only have plans more for 3, and have not said when they're going to be built.
There's an easy solution to this prison crisis. Kick out these foreign prisoners. Just 10,500
yes.
of them. Get proper return agreements. Kick them all out.
But how hard is it to make detention-like centres to put people in for soft crimes like, I say soft, they're not soft if it affects you, burglary, whatever. We don't need hardline jails for them, but there has to be a consequence. And when there is no consequence, people are just going... that's why violent crime is rising.
The immediate problem is that our prisons are at 98% capacity.
Yeah.
We're going to run out of prison space in November. We nearly ran out of prison space last summer. So there is, in the short term, there is an imperative, unfortunately, to release some prisoners or to release some prisoners early. The point is they need to be really careful about looking at they said, let's not release violent criminals, sexual offenders.
And then did.
And they did, and they absolutely mustn't do that again. But they need to look at people who are in there for, as you said, for softer crimes with shorter sentences and releasing those...
out stupid,
inflammatory
tweets
about
the Southport riots.
And a lot of those people
why do they have to go to prison?
A lot of those people are in jail. Why aren't they getting out early?
Yeah.
And we should talk about the Peter Sullivan case, really. It's a good follow-on from this, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
This is the man who was jailed for 38 years for a crime he didn't commit. And the story this morning, which is shocking beyond words, is that the maximum compensation this man can get is £1 million.
It's appalling, isn't it?
For 38 years.
The whole lot of his life.
Well, yeah, it's a wrecked life, but it's just this. I just read this here, which was shocking. I didn't realise this. There've been 2 people who've been given compensation in jail. In September last year, a High Court judge awarded a guy called Stephen Wilson £5.4 million for being stabbed in a prison canteen. So he got 5 points. So, and then another man who was an epileptic who fell out of his bunk in jail, he got more than £4 million. So why is Peter Sullivan just getting £1 million?
That is extraordinary. They've got to do something about that, Andy, haven't they?
That is
His
crazy.
entire life has been, adult life has been, he's lost it.
It's one of it's one of those where there's no real amount of financial compensation that can truly make a difference, that can truly compensate for that. But of course, £1 million, 38 years, you divide that million by 38. It's not very much money.
And what prosecutions are going to happen for? Because the DNA evidence has been around for the last 10 years, which would have proved his innocence.
Yeah.
Who was going to be charged over that? Who's going to go to jail over that? And you know, who was in prison for 38 years anymore? For anything.
It's also a very good example of why we shouldn't have the death penalty. So every time people are saying, well, let's bring back the death penalty. Oh, I mean, there's a great Ian Hislop clip from Have I Got News for You about 10 years ago where he's on with Priti Patel and she says, well, you know, it's fine. And he says, no, don't say, well, you know, because he'd be dead.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know, Peter Sullivan is not dead, but he has had no life. And that is the bottom line here. So, you know, with £1 million, he probably couldn't buy a house. If he wanted to buy a house in London, he couldn't get a flat for that in this city.
No.
So how is he going to rebuild his life? And he's only had 29 grand of it so far, which is beyond shocking.
Andy, what's this story that David Lammy's got himself into some sort of trouble in the French Alps over a taxi fare?
Well,
our diplomat in chief.
This sounds bad, and I think I know that Carol has a different view to the one I do. But here's the key point in this Mail story, right? So David Lammy, he's in the Alps, he's with his wife, and he takes a taxi, and it's an expensive taxi ride, right? So he gets to the end, and he's asked to pay 590
and
quid.
he's on official
pretty expensive
business?
Taxi.
He had been on, but then he wasn't. He was going skiing.
That's right, exactly. So it was after that, so he has to pay. But the Mail understands that the driver who was sitting next to his wife opened a compartment and showed her a knife while demanding more money. What? So
we have only...
That seems pretty threatening to me.
Well, is it threatening? I mean,
yes.
You know, you
showing someone a knife.
It to me as he pulled a knife on it. Well, no, he didn't. But if you're owed 600 quid for a cab fare, you don't know who the people in the cab are. You know, as far as he didn't know who Lammy was. He had no idea.
Something to do with the British Embassy, he said.
So, but you know, you don't know what's going to happen to you. If somebody suddenly says, I'm not paying your fare, what's going to happen? So I just think it's really shocking that the driver has been charged with stealing his luggage, because what the driver did was chucked him out, kept the luggage, and then went to the police station.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a man who was about to stab somebody when he goes to the police station.
Because he did go to the police station with the luggage, which is quite an interesting twist to that story.
Yeah, it's a funny one, but I just think there is absolutely a campaign to discredit and besmirch David Lammy across the whole press.
He does that all of his own volition.
You might say that. Actually, I think he's quietly getting on with doing quite a decent job, actually.
What do you think he's done?
I do, because I think our diplomatic relations with major allies and with countries across the world have improved.
What about the ones he insulted? What about America?
But he's got a perfectly good relationship with JD Vance. They got on really well, apparently. We've just done a trade deal with them.
Well,
so
JD
that seems to be going all right.
politely forgave the things he said about him and about Trump.
But apparently they've bonded over having some kind of similar-ish sort of upbringing. I mean, it's not quite...
Has he worked out yet that the black smoke coming out of the Sistine Chapel during the Papal Conclave is not racist?
Oh,
as he suggested during
he
did during the conclave for was it Bennett? No, it was Francis.
Yes, a few years.
Did he really?
He really did.
He did.
And he then put a statement out apologising for the suggestion.
OK, well, I'm not going to defend that.
And he thought that Marie Antoinette discovered radiation.
He did.
That's what
and he also was asked which monarch followed Henry VIII when he was on Celebrity Mastermind, and he said Henry VII. Of course you'd say
we're not all historians, are we?
Well, look, I mean, I think the David Lammy issue that I can't forgive him for was when he was asked about trans men and he said you could grow a cervix.
Exactly.
With the right hormone.
That's the other one.
I mean, look, men don't necessarily know the intricacies of the female fertility system, but nevertheless...
Hopefully more than that,
He's married and he's got children, so he might have a bit of a better...
But he is as thick as mince, and this man is in charge of our foreign affairs.
Say what you mean, Malone.
Well, but he is. How can you think that Marie Antoinette invented radiation? How can you think the black smoke coming out of the Vatican is racist?
The thing I find astonishing is that he was prepared to pay £1,000 for a taxi fare.
Well, do we know if he was going to try and claim it back on expenses?
Well, that's right. It was £970 was the total.
Yeah, that's not a cheap cab, is it?
We do have to read a statement from the Foreign Office. The spokesman said, we totally refute these allegations. The fare was paid in full. The Foreign Secretary and his wife are named as victims in this matter, and the driver's been charged with theft. There we are.
I wonder what the nation will think of that, though.
Where are we? We're going to...
Doha.
Oh, we're going to go to Doha. Let's go across to Doha.
Pete Hegg says the American Defence Secretary is talking to US troops there. In fact, Donald Trump's on the stage, so we'd rather listen to him than Pete Hegseth, because most people's never heard of him. He is the American Defence Secretary. Here is the Donald. If you're listening on the radio, he's walking on. Big applause. He's clapping himself, as he's wont to do.
Bringing peace to the Middle East.
Yeah.
He's made the most extraordinary speech this week about the fact that he has to bring everybody together. He put a
What is the music they're playing? Anybody know the music? What is it?
I haven't got any talkback, I'm afraid. I can't tell you. I have no idea. He normally plays YMCA, but that may not go down too well.
No, probably not good, really.
If you were the Middle East, that was a gay anthem.
A Christian gay anthem in Doha. That probably is.
So now we know why he's not in Turkey with... Well, we know he wasn't going to go to Turkey unless Putin was there, but here he is.
Turkey haven't bought him an enormous jet.
No, yes, well...
That's not the truth, Andy. That's not the case, Andy.
So he's on stage in Doha. There's a huge Star and Stripes flag in the background, and he's lapping up the applause from the American troops because he is Commander-in-Chief, of course, as President of the United States. So he's rather revelling it all.
He made a very clear speech where he said to Iran, you will never have a nuclear weapon. Very powerful stuff. And if you don't cooperate, what he's saying to the Middle East is, I will destroy you via your wallets. I will crash your economies. That is a very powerful message to give out to the Middle East. He's very much enjoying this job. I think he's doing a remarkable job.
Well, and his energy levels, Malone.
Well, yeah, and
everywhere.
He's only doing what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was criticism yesterday for meeting Mohammed bin Salman. Meeting him because he's whatever human rights.
Chopped up the journalist in embassy.
Yes. Okay. So. Not good, clearly. Terrible. However, we do business with Chinese presidents.
We do.
Keir Starmer has just invited a terrorist into this country. Yeah. So to imagine that you shouldn't do business with people who've committed hellish crimes and done hellish things.
He signed trade deals worth £45 billion.
£456 billion.
Yeah, record level.
Yes, record levels.
And Andy, we talked about this yesterday. When Blair became Prime Minister, he had a Foreign Secretary called Robin Cook, and they were going to have an ethical foreign policy. It lasted 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Because they realised that you have to sell arms to countries who
you hate.
Yeah, you don't like.
It's realpolitik. You've got to be pragmatic in global affairs. You have to. Otherwise, as you alluded to, Carol, everyone would say China, no thank you, persona non grata. That's just not realistic.
The IRA, they became a government, so we did business with them.
Yeah, we did.
They killed people on our soil, and yet in the end we do business with them. It's a horrible, terrible thing, but it is.
But I think the important thing is you have to use those relationships and leverage them and use that influence to speak truth to power and to try and put pressure on them to change. But whether or not that's going to happen. But look at Saudi. Saudi has changed a lot in the last 10. I'm not being paid by them, by the way. As some people on television are, but
Go on.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Not me. Not Beverly that I'm aware of.
They've come a long way in hosting the 2034 World Cup, and sports washing works very well. So there they are with their massive trade deal with the United States.
Do you think he's doing a good job, though, Donald Trump, in terms of demonstrating that he isn't the warmonger that some people on the left would have?
Well, he's not.
There was no war at all on his watch in the 4 years he was president first time.
But he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
He was going to make America rich and great again, and that's exactly what he's doing. And he's doing it in record time.
Yeah, and he is. He did get a ceasefire even before he was in the United States, in the White House in Israel, Gaza. Yes. Well, let's have a listen to him. He's about to speak. The president.
Everybody, this is an honor. What a beautiful group of people you are. You are good. I wish I looked like you. I would have been president 20 years ago if I looked like you. But I want to give a special hello to Al Udeid Air Base, sometimes referred to as the Deed. That's a little sinister term, the Deed. Today, we can all relax and be at ease, and we're going to have a little fun. I have nothing else to do, so let's have a little fun, right? So I'm thrilled to be here with the men and women who embody American strength and pride, the warriors of the United States Armed Forces. It's an amazing group of people. You are, without a doubt, the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. That's the way it is. I said it last night. I said it strong. We have the strongest military in the world. There's not even a contest. We have the best equipment. Nobody has equipment like us. Nobody has the planes or the missiles or anything else. And as your commander-in-chief, I'm here to say that America's military will soon be bigger, better, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. We just did a budget. The budget was the highest by far, over $1 trillion. It's a lot. That's a lot of stuff, and hopefully it's peace through strength. Hopefully we don't have to use it, because if you use it, I feel sorry for the other guy, but we don't want to have to use it. I want to recognize a true warrior, and that's our Secretary of Defense. They put him through hell, the radical left did, and he's incredible. You know, he went to the best schools, he did the best stuff. He's a smart guy, and he's a great guy, and I just listened to his words standing backstage when he was speaking, and he really has it right on the peg. Pete Hegseth, he's going to be great. You're going to love this guy. You're going to love him. And I also want to influence you to clap for a man who's a great influencer. In fact, my son, Barron, said, "Dad, you got to do an interview with somebody I hadn't heard of." But my son knew very well. He knows everyone. He said, "Dad, this is before the election. You know, we won in a landslide, in case you hadn't known." But he said, "Dad, you got to do an interview with a guy named Theo Vaughn." I said, "Who the hell is Theo Vaughn?" He said, "Dad, he's such a big guy. You got to do an interview." So he knew all the names. I didn't know the names. And where is Theo? He's around here someplace, I think. Theo, thank you very much. That's Barron. You know Barron. He said, "You got to do with that." We had a good time, right? Had a good time. We had like 270 million people that listened. So you know what? I think Barron was right. Thank you for being here, Theo. Appreciate it. Also, Lee Greenwood, right from the beginning, that song went on. And, you know, that song was a successful song, but we made it the most, #1. We made that song, it's the top of the list of that type of song. That's a pretty big, I don't want to go into the list because you'll get upset with me if I do. Like the national anthem and things. It's like, and it became unbelievable. And I was saying you could get Elvis or anybody else to do a song. There's nothing. That was my intro song right from the beginning, because as you know, we won 3 elections, okay? And some people want us to do a 4th. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. You saw the new hat. The hottest hat is, it says, Trump 2028. We're driving the left crazy when you see that. We didn't need that hat, but it's been an amazing period of time. And when Lee Greenwood did that song, it went from the first day. I came out, we played it. It was a great song, but we didn't know. And then I did it a second time, a third time. And that was 968 rallies ago. Can you believe that? We did 968 rallies. Another hat says 968. I said, what the hell does that mean? That's the number of rallies. I said, you have to be kidding. But from the very beginning, and we played Lee's song, and it was the walk-on. And then for the last inauguration, I had all the big singers, they wanted to do a song for me, and they wanted to have me walk on to their song. And my people, oh, that would be nice, that would be nice. And when I heard about it, we were all set. We had a lot of them. And I heard about it. I said, I'm not switching. Are you kidding me? I'm not switching. So we stick with Lee. But nobody could have done better than Lee. And he's been so loyal and so great. And it's been really about 9 years of that stuff. And, you know, we had honestly, we had 3 unbelievable campaigns, and it's been an honor. And there's nobody been stronger than the military in terms of backing us, nobody. So I just want to thank you all very much. Great honor. Thank you very much. And also with us today is really a great talent. And somebody who's one of the most popular television hosts in history. Still looks young to me, but he's been doing it a long time. But he's an incredible man. He's always seems to take my side, and therefore I like him even more. But he has common sense. We talk about common sense all the time, but he's one of the biggest in the history of television, the great Sean Hannity. He's here someplace. Sean, stand up wherever you are. Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Where is it? Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. He was a little shy for a change. I've never seen that. We're also grateful to have a very excellent ambassador, Timmy Davis. Everybody loves him. Timmy, thank you very much. Thank you, Timmy. Along with your great military leaders, these are real leaders. These are real tough cookies. Lieutenant General Derek Trapper France, Major General David Shoemaker, Brigadier General Richard Deuce Dickens, Chief Master Sergeants Chris Murphy and Joshua Wiener, and Colonel Brian Ellis. We want to thank you, amazing people. They're real leaders, and this is one of the great bases anywhere in the world, and we're lucky to have them. Thank you very much, fellas. And a very special thanks as well to our partners from the Qatar Army and Armed Forces. Let's give them a really special hand. They are so great. They are so great. And in particular, we want to give a little special applause for somebody that's been so good. Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister, Saud. Where are you, Saud? Thank you very much. Great. Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. Yesterday, we signed an agreement for Qatar to purchase $42 billion worth of the finest American military hardware, including THAAD missile batteries, Pegasus refueling aircraft, Desert Vipers, light armored vehicles, amphibious combat vehicles, the MQ-9B, and the Sky Guardian drones. That's all the best stuff. If it isn't, please stand up and tell me and we'll get something else. But I believe it's the best. Qatar will also be investing $10 billion to support this massive base in the coming years, and there's no place like it, they say. And a man, the leader, Amir, he's been a special friend of mine for a long time. Long before I did the political thing, when he was a novice, he was a young guy, and we got to know each other, and we liked each other and got along long before I ever thought of running for president. And it's nice when you have that kind of a relationship. We got along right from the beginning. He's a special guy. He's a great leader of your country. So I want to just congratulate you on that, and all the Qatari people. A spectacular group, and it's an honor, and I don't think our friendship's ever been stronger than it is right now. It's you had the last administration. I don't know if they knew too much about what was happening, but this administration does, and you will never see anything like the relationship that we have. We just left Saudi Arabia, as you know, and you have a fantastic Crown Prince. He is a fantastic guy likewise, and we're going from here, we're going to UAE and United Arab Emirates, and we're going to see another leader. We have, it's an amazing part of the world, and our relationship has never been stronger. And you're going to see that as time goes by. But with us, it's not words. As you know, I'm in the midst of a very historic trip, visiting the key partners in the Gulf. We had just some incredible stopovers and a wonderful day. Yesterday, we had the dinner, however, with His Highness, the Emir, and he is, I'm going to see him in a little while. I'm going to be saying goodbye to him, but we'll be saying hello again very, very soon. But no visit in the Gulf would be complete without stopping to salute the people who keep America safe, strong, and free, and the patriots of the United States Army, Navy, Space Force. I love Space Force. That's I have to say, that's my little baby. You know, I started that. They said, that will never work. Oh, it worked. You know, we were way behind Russia and China, and now we're way, way ahead of everybody. So Space Force, I'm very happy. That was my, you know, not since the Air Force has that happened. So we created a force, and it's a big force. and it's a brilliant force. So Space Force, thank you for doing such a great job. The Marines, and of course the United States Air Force. Al Udeid is the home of the legendary 379th Air Expeditionary Wing, known as the Grand Slam Wing. We also have the 1st Expeditionary Theater Support Group. You got them all. And let's not forget the top-notch Army soldiers from the 11th Air Defense Artillery, the Imperial Brigade. Thank you, fellas. That's great. We also have the 8th Expeditionary Air Mobility Squadron, known as Mighty Ochos. Where are the Ochos? We don't want to fight with them. All of you are the tip of the spear. You're the finest we have. Anywhere in the world, you're the finest we have. You're the finest anyone has in the fight against the enemies of civilization. You're the people that are defeating chaos, combating terror, defending our interests, supporting our allies, securing our homeland, and making America incredibly proud. And you know what? Making America great again. That's what's happened. It's happened very fast. Happened very fast. As president, my priority is to end conflicts, not start them, but I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States of America or our partners. And this is one of our great partners right here. When we're threatened, America's military will answer our enemies without even thinking about it. We have overwhelming strength and devastating force. And we had people that didn't like to talk about that, you know? They didn't want to talk about the level of quality that we have. They didn't want to talk about anything. We're going to have a big parade this year, you know, in Washington, D.C., a real parade. And I'll tell you just a little story. A week ago, May 8th, I'd call up a certain country and they said, oh, we're celebrating the victory of World War II today, sir. Oh, really? I'd speak to one of the presidents or prime ministers or whatever. And they were so busy. Oh, yes, we're celebrating the victory of World War II. Then I speak to another one, and they were celebrating. And the fact is, Russia was celebrating. France was celebrating. Everybody was celebrating but us. And we're the ones that won the war. We won the war. And they helped. But without us, they don't win the war. We're all speaking German. You know that, right? Without us, they're speaking German, maybe a little Japanese, too. We won the war, and we're the only ones that didn't celebrate. So what I did is I got my crack staff over there, and we did it every time. We have May 8th, and we also have the date in November, that sacred date in November for World War I, because we won that war, too. But think of it, I'm calling. Now, we love France, right? But I think we did a little more to win the war than France did. Do we agree? You know, I don't want to be a wise guy. But when Hitler made his speech at the Eiffel Tower, I would say that wasn't exactly ideal. And I called up the president, Macron, good guy, by the way. Donald, we are celebrating our victory over the Germans. Oh, that's wonderful. No, we don't take credit for what we do. And I said, what the hell? Every country I've spoken to in the last week is celebrating the war but us. Isn't that terrible? So we're going to be doing holidays. But I said it has to be a working holiday because, you can only do so many of them. We have a lot of holidays. I'm not so sure we should have them, and you don't have to go to work. Our country has to go to work. So we're going to have a working holiday for each one of those 2 dates. And we're going to be celebrating, too, because we should celebrate more than anybody else. And others did help a lot, but nobody helped like us. We wouldn't have won. I mean, the fact is, not winnable without us. And now we're stronger than ever before. You know, I rebuilt the military in my first term. We had a great first term every way. We had the greatest economy ever, stock market up 88%, the biggest rise ever, all of that stuff. But the second term is going to be even better. We have over $10 trillion going to be invested in our country. And this little tour didn't hurt, I will tell you, between the 3 great places. I recently announced that I'll approve an unprecedented $1 trillion, as I told you. It's going to end up going higher, investment in the U.S. Armed Forces, and that's a record as part of that effort. I signed an order to build the Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our country from missile attack. Is everybody okay with that? It was called the Iron Dome, but I changed it to the Golden Dome. I thought it was a little more beautiful, maybe a little more modern or something. But we're going to have it, and it's amazing actually what they do. It's going to cost many billions of dollars, all made in the USA. I want it all made in the USA. The days of making our parts all over the world because we have wonderful partners. No, it's America first now. America first. We're going to make it all in the USA. And we're going to, by the way, it's America first, but we're going to take care of other countries. We're going to have plenty left over because we're doing things now. 6 months ago, our country was laughed at. Now our country is respected again at a level that it hasn't seen in a long, long time. And we're going to keep it that way. And our Air Force will soon have the world's first and only sixth-generation fighter jet, the F-47. Why did they name it 47? Does anybody know? I don't know. That was a nice thing. But it's quite the plane. They say there's never been anything done. But we're also looking at an increased version of the F-35. I think we're going to call it the F-55, which will be a double-engine plane. I like two engines on a plane. I'm sorry if I say that. But does that make sense to anybody? Does anybody agree? General, do you agree with that? I like it. Thank you. So many of the
That is, of course, President Trump talking in Qatar. If you want to keep up to date with all of that trip, please scan the QR code on your screen now, or you can head to GBN2 on YouTube.
Still ahead, we're going to have the latest from Keir Starmer's plan to smash the gangs. Remember when they were going to smash the gangs? This time he's going to do it with help from Albania. He's in Albania meeting the Prime Minister of Albania, who's a towering figure, literally. Prime Minister of Albania is 6'7".
It truly is an international Britain's newsroom this morning. We've been in Qatar, we've been to Turkey, and we're going to be there in Albania in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's newsroom.
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Alnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news within the past few minutes. The Prime Minister has announced plans for an offshore processing centre for illegally arrived migrants. Have a listen.
Lots of talks about these return hubs, offshore processing possibly in Albania. What's your plans there? Is that part of your talks in Albania?
Well, it's very important that we bear down on irregular migration, unlawful migration. We've already taken effective action on arrests and seizure of assets across the globe, high-level arrests. We've already got many agreements in place now with other countries for cooperating on law enforcement. You saw some of that here in Albania this morning. UK forces alongside Albanian forces. What now we want to do, and we're having discussions on, talks on, is return hubs, which is where someone's been through the system in the UK, they need to be returned, and we have to make sure they're returned effectively, and we'll do that if we can through return hubs. So that's what the talk's about. I would say in this area, no single measure is going to be the measure that is, if you like, a silver bullet. By putting it all together, arrests, seizures, agreements with other countries, returning people who shouldn't be here, and return hubs, if we can, through these talks, to add to our armoury, will allow us to bear down on this vile trade and to make sure that we stop those people crossing the channel.
So the full interview with the Prime Minister, with our own political editor Christopher Hope, will go on air at midday today. Do not miss it. That will be Good Afternoon Britain. Of course, you can hear it too on the radio, so don't miss it. Do you want us to tell us more and flesh out what this means is our Home Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, morning. Now, this has been widely floated that these hubs could be in Albania, Serbia, Bosnia and North Macedonia. But how does it work? People watching and think, does that mean when people cross the channel, the moment they arrive at Dover, we say, thanks very much, you're now getting on a plane or a boat to one of these hubs where their applications will be processed?
Yeah, it's not going to work like that, that's for sure. There is no doubt, though, that this is a major development. There had been much speculation for many months about whether the government was going to go down the road of trying to look at some kind of offshoring for those entering our asylum system and who may have not had a strong case to stay in the UK. Now, what this is not is Rwanda. I even hesitate to say it's a Rwanda-light because it isn't. It would be individuals who have come to the UK, who have claimed asylum, who've gone through the system and had been given a decision, an initial decision, whereby, as far as the British government was concerned, there was no case really that these people should remain in the country, and they're from a safe country as well, but maybe they don't have the documentation, because we know, of course, that the people smugglers tell many migrants to throw their documentation away before they ever arrive in the UK. They would then be sent out to these third-party hubs, these third-country hubs, the first one being in Albania, as you mentioned there, Andrew, a number of other countries in talks with the UK at the moment to set up similar hubs. So they would go out, they would be held in Albania basically, while any potential further appeals by these individuals are exhausted and the sort of processes are put in place to get them returned to their own country. So it is an enhanced way of kind of dealing with migration that we haven't had thus far. Remember, all we've ever heard from this Prime Minister from the day he was elected in July of last year was we're going to smash the gangs. It's been a law and order approach, a law enforcement approach to the migrant problem from day one. Now, clearly, he's looking at another aspect that could be described absolutely as a deterrent. Quite what a deterrent it will be at the end of the day, we don't know, because the thing I think to add about this that's important is these will be people who have been turned down. Many people who come across the English Channel either get allowed to stay or get leave to remain because they come from countries where you could never return them to, because the human rights lawyers would argue and argue successfully in the courts that these countries are just not safe to return them to. Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and South Sudan and a myriad of other countries.
So, let's just be clear then, Mark. So these people, they've applied for asylum, the asylum application has been rejected, so then they've got no case to stay, but they can appeal. But so is it then the appeal is going to be processed in an offshore hub?
Yes, that is correct. What it's aimed at doing is trying to stop the process. And I think this actually will be welcomed by many people. The process that we've seen time and again, where people are turned down initially for an asylum claim, then it's dragged out in the courts for years with appeal and reappeal any time that they're turned down, with, of course, these immigration lawyers well versed in what angle to use to try to ensure that their client gets leave to remain at the end of the day. It's to try to stop that process, and the government's quite clear, try to stop those who in the years that they could still be in the UK appealing and trying to stay don't go off and get married and have children and use that as a very significant lever to apply to the courts with a view to remain under European human rights laws.
But they can. Will we be still paying for them, Mark? Do you know, whilst they are treading water in Albania, frankly, on the beautiful beaches of Albania, treading water in the nice warm sea? Will we still be paying for them?
And there's the rub. It didn't take you long to get there, Bev. I knew we could rely on you. Yes, of course, we'll be paying for them. There's no doubt about it. Albania, they're not going to do it out of the goodness of their heart, are they? This is the British taxpayer who's going to be paying for them. OK, it will be, I'm sure, a bit cheaper out in Albania than it would be necessarily having to keep them in asylum accommodation in this country, with all of the wraparound services that are involved in that. But yes, it's the British taxpayer that's going to have to foot the bill until we're finally at the point where these people are returned to their own country.
And just on that, Mark, so the British government paid Rwanda like a bounty almost, an annual fee. So not only will we be paying for the refugees, asylum seekers, the failed asylum seekers, to be living in Albania, will we be paying the Albanian government a fee as well for the processing centre?
Yep.
So how much is that going to cost?
We will be doing, and it won't be lost. It won't, well, millions, many millions. It won't, and in multiple countries. It won't be lost on.
We're fine, sir. And then.
Sorry, we've just
squirted up against the wall £700 million for the Rwanda scheme that never saw a single flight in anger, only 2 or 3 volunteers who went before it actually got off the ground running. This government, for whatever reason, you'd have to ask Keir Starmer, was determined that he would not allow the Rwanda scheme to continue and even give it a chance. But that was £700 million in the preparatory phase for that. We're effectively going to go back to day one again with these other countries. I'm sure it's not going to be anywhere like the cost of the Rwanda programme. That, I think that is for sure, but it's still going to be costly. There's no doubt about it.
Mark, just so we're really clear on this, because the detail is yet to be uncovered. Will this stop people who want to live in this country via illegal routes getting on dinghies to come across to the UK? Will TikTok this afternoon be saying, from the people traffickers, will they be saying, new deal, you don't get to go on a dinghy to London anymore, we're not going to send you over to Dover? what we're going to do is we're going to transport you to Albania, where you can go to the processing centre so you don't have to get on the boats anymore. It's not that, is it?
No, and it's all part of the calculation, isn't it? The odds that are weighed up, really, about the chances of being able to stay in the UK. At the moment, the vast majority of people who come over on small boats are going to stay here. It's something ridiculous. About 3% of those who come on small boats are ever removed, because the fact is that they, with the human rights lawyers who are now so versed and professional, they've had years to be able to develop their arguments in court. They're able to ensure that these people get the right to remain, because there are so many different countries that you could argue in a court in this country that, yeah, it's not really that safe to send them back to that particular country. And many of them just end up exhausting the appeal system over a number of years, going off, as I said before, and getting a wife and having a family, which absolutely then really sort of increases the chances that a judge will eventually rule in their favour. So it's aimed at trying to stop that. But no, I think the vast majority of people that are trekking thousands of miles from whichever part of the world they come from with a view to getting to the UK are going to make that calculation in their head, just like the dangers of crossing the Mediterranean or the dangers of crossing the Channel. The percentage chances are that I'm going to be allowed to stay in the UK, and yeah, it's not going to be a real deterrent at the end of the day.
Just finally, Mark, the portents here are not good, because, as you know, the Italian Prime Minister Meloni unveiled a similar scheme a year ago, a return agreement with Albania, 2 processing centres set up in 2 different towns. How many people have been deported in that year? Not one. Because the lawyers in Italy have tied it up in knots, which is exactly what the wretched human rights lawyers would do in this country.
Well, yes, that scheme has absolutely, as you say, has just been mired in difficulties with the legal system in Italy. I mean, they wanted to do it slightly differently, in that if you came across the Mediterranean, they would assess on the spot, really, whether they thought you had a chance of having a successful asylum claim. You'd be off to Italy, and if you won at the end of the day that asylum claim, you could return to Italy. But regardless, yeah, it's been absolutely bogged down by these legal challenges. And there's every reason to believe that the lawyers in this country are going to challenge any decision to send someone off to a third country when they're still in the process of trying to appeal the decisions handed down by a court.
I think, Mark, the answer is we don't allow them to have any appeals. That's it. They've had one go, and the appeal, they lose the appeal, kick them out.
Well, I mean, listen, the Rwanda scheme, for one, it had its critics, but the one thing really big thing that it had going for it was the fact that anybody arriving potentially would be offshored in Rwanda. That would be it. You would never get the opportunity to come and claim asylum in the UK, regardless of whether there was any merit to your claim. That, because many people had said in France, when it really looked as though that was going to get off the ground, was a deterrent. People said that they would think twice about coming if they were going to end up back in Africa.
Fascinating.
Thank you, Mark. Well, the detail of this will be emerging. Mark White, there, our Home Security Editor, this afternoon, and we have that exclusive interview with Keir Starmer that Christopher Hope has done, and that will be on your telly and your radio at midday.
You just have to treat all this stuff with a very, very large pinch of salt.
A very, very large gin and tonic. I thought you were going to say that, Andrew Pearce, because honestly, I despair. As soon as you think they've come up with some sort of solution, once you dive into the detail, it is not what it appears to be.
It's going to cost millions and millions of pounds, and the moment the government say, right, you've lost your appeal, we're going to send you to Albania or North Macedonia, human rights lawyers will tie it up in knots and they won't go, which is what's happened in Italy.
Well, like Mark says...
Because Italy's part of the European Court of Human Rights, and we are still, and that's what's going to happen.
Anthony says, cheaper my backside in relation to whether this is going to be a more cost-effective way. Kit says the Rwanda scheme was better. You got shipped out immediately.
You did.
A lot of you at home can see right through this. And that is why GB News viewers and listeners are the cleverest in the country, because you have a very finely tuned balderdash-ometer.
Yeah.
I nearly used a different word. Taxpayers should not be paying any legal costs, says Elizabeth. This is stealing from taxpayers. Thomas, the immigration lawyers are the problem. Get rid of them.
Do not forget our Prime Minister is a specialist human rights lawyer.
Yeah, and he really is. It's
in his DNA.
Yeah. If all European countries are fighting the ECHR to deport migrants, what legitimacy does the court have, and who still wants it? Anyone? Another smoke and mirrors idea from Starmer, says John. Morning, John. And it's a joke, says Patricia. Starmer is going around the world. We had the Rwanda scheme paid for. Now we're going for an Albania scheme, all of which is still costing us money after all the other countries all the other countries should be putting money in the pot. Why do we, the UK, have to always seem to foot the bill?
Good point. Now, it is time, of course, in the programme for our great giveaway, the biggest to date. Your chance to win that motorhome, which is worth more than £67,000 and £5,000 in cash. One lucky viewer, listener, will win it all. Here's the details.
Great Britain is ready for you to explore this summer, and there's still plenty of time to grab this fabulous family motorhome. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, the Elnag Baron 560 comfortably sleeps 4, has integrated bathroom and kitchen spaces, and plenty of storage for all of the things you'd need to bring along on your next adventure. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that anywhere you visit in your brand new motorhome is done in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come this morning, Donald Trump is still addressing American troops in Qatar. We'll bring you all the best bits.
Up next, Gary Lineker's finally issued an apology, finally, for yet another of his political tweets. We're asking, should the BBC just get rid of him? Well, I think we know what I think. Yes.
I know what you think, Andrew.
You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This must have been the most difficult time.
Yeah, for him, yeah, obviously. But I noticed there's no mention of the one that happened to me when I was a Top Gear presenter, when I ended up upside down in a ditch just outside Ormskirk and had to burrow my way out of the wreckage.
Gosh.
He was then taken to hospital having been scalped with numerous injuries and was told to keep quiet and not tell anybody about it. And get this, had to ride back from the hospital to my house on a motorcycle. They just keep quiet about it. And they just paid off the guy whose Lotus Classic car was completely written off in the accident.
Gosh.
And the only trace of this incident is on my Wikipedia page, where at the bottom it says, "We love getting together as presenters so we could have a good laugh about what Steve Berry had crashed that week. Jeremy Clarkson, having a good old laugh at my expense."
Well, Steve, I'm really sorry. I had no idea that had happened to you, and obviously,
No,
equally...
you know, nobody's got any idea what happened to me. They just had a good old laugh about it. I had to burrow my way out to that car like a badger. My hands were cut to shreds, and I had to ride home. Having been scalped, I had to have my scalp stapled back onto my head They told me to shut up and keep quiet about it. And I got £6 grand. The problem for me is it's just dangerous. Once you start messing about with cars and motorbikes, it's just you're rolling the dice every single time you do it. And every so often it's going to come up snake eyes. And it did for Freddie. And I feel sorry for the lad. It's terrible what happened to him. But I'll tell you what, that £9 million must...
well, it's a dangerous game, isn't it? Steve Berry, thanks indeed for joining us.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev, and of course delighted to say in the studio, Andy Williams, political commentator, and journalist and broadcaster Carol Malone. Right, what do we want to talk about, both of you?
Do you want to do the... Well, I mean, we can do the trans toddlers if you want.
Can you believe this?
No, I can't believe the story. This is...
Honest to God, I thought after the CAS review that would bring some stop.
Yeah.
This would all be... Yeah.
But let's tell people the story first.
Yeah,
the story is that that the NHS is treating nursery-age children who believe they are transgender after
whose
walking
parents
down.
think they're transgender.
Yeah, well, and this is the problem, isn't it? So the health service was previously due to set a minimum age of 7, which is still way too young.
Yeah.
Incredibly young.
But now, any age. So if you're a 2-year-old toddler who likes to wear dungarees, presumably you might be at the trans clinic before you know
But
it.
is that a thick parent? Is it a thick parent who hasn't worked out that it's OK for boys to play with dolls and
I
girls
don't
to play
think
with
thick's the
football?
word I'd use, just badly misguided.
Well, I was going to ask a genuine question.
When you say offensive.
When you say parents who think their kids might be trans, why do we know what the rationale is? Why do they think that?
Because the little boy's playing with a doll?
Yeah, they would be the obvious signs that the children are, that a girl is showing obvious signs of wanting to play boys' games with whatever. I don't know. But whatever it is not real at 7. It's not real at 4. It's not real at 3.
No, it's not.
So, might not be real at 15.
It might not be real at 15.
Quite.
But, you know, the NHS seems to be, you know, infused with this trans ideology. You know, you're messing around with kids' lives here on something that is an ideology. And something that is in contravention of biological fact, and you're treating children. And I don't know what, in God's name, treating 7-year-olds means. I don't know what it means. Whether they're giving them drugs, I don't know what they're doing.
No, they're not. They're not giving them drugs.
Okay. But whatever they're doing, even if they're feeding this idea that they may or may not be trans, it's wrong. Age 7.
Well, I totally agree with that, because what I would say is that when you're 16 years old or 15 years old, gender is something that is real, just as separately sexuality is something that is real and that you can feel and have a conception of at that age. It's not when you're 4 years old. You can't. You're not developed enough. Your brain is not developed enough to understand the concept of gender.
It certainly shouldn't be the trigger for access to mental health services, which is what I think this story is about.
Yes.
So you take your child to the GP and you say, you know, Olivia thinks she's Oliver, and then the GP has to say, Olivia, you're not Oliver. Like, somebody has to be honest with the parent and the child, and it feels like they suddenly, rather than risk upsetting the parent or the child, they set them on the pathway.
Completely.
To psychological.
Yes. So if you have enough psychiatrists telling you probably are trans, well, then you're going to think you are by the time you're 16. And, you know, we know a lot of these, even at 16, a lot of these people have other issues.
Yeah.
Which are not connected to gender. But if you get told they are, if you get told your mental health issue is because you're in the wrong body, and you've been told that at 7, you're going to believe it at 16.
Well, there's an increasing view that some of these children who have these issues, could be to do with autism.
Of course, that's one of the major things. It could be home life, it could be a trauma, it could be anything, and that's the point. We don't know. And yet we're treating these kids aged 3, 4, 5 like they know what
I don't like banning anything, Andy, but I just think this is wicked.
It's abuse.
Wicked.
Yeah,
have
and well, as
children
you said, after
2 and 3 year olds. It's wicked.
I can't believe that anybody thinks it's sensible to be thinking about things in those terms.
Who are these people in the NHS who think this is a good thing to do?
Well, I wonder whether there's a wider sort of conversation to be had about people reaching too quickly and too much for the mental health lever here. Now, mental health is incredibly important and a real, I think there's a real epidemic of mental health in this country and beyond, not least because of social media. But if you've got a 3 or 4 year old, are they having mental health problems at that age? I'm not sure that's the case. They may have other conditions, absolutely.
They've used the word there, experimenting, and that's exactly what this is. You know, it has echoes of terrible things a long time ago, and you're experimenting with a 3-year-old child who may never recover from your experiment. And we call this is our health service, which is supposed to take care of our health and our well-being, and it's really not in the case.
And I'm sorry, but there's money to be made.
Yes.
Transgender operations are a very lucrative subscription service to drugs for the rest of your life. So these children are vulnerable to people who might want to make money out of them. Right. Should we talk about Gary Lineker, Carol?
I'd love to talk about Gary.
His anti-Semitic post. And I remind you, in fact, we must look at... We'll be waiting for the result, hearing on this, because the Lucy Connolly case, she's the woman who was sentenced to over 2 years in prison for some pretty vile posts on social media, which she deleted, and she said she was grieving and she was in a source of emotional distress.
After the Southport
That's right, after the Southport stabbings, Axel crime. She went to prison for 2.5 years. Wife of a Conservative councillor. Gary Lineker puts up an anti-Semitic trope paid for by the state on the BBC, and he just says, oh, sorry, and takes it down, and there's no consequences.
And interesting, this is the first time of all the terrible tweets that he's posted, the first time he's actually said sorry. And I think it's because for the first time, I mean, I know he's at the end of his contract and it's going to end soon, but the BBC should not let him get to that. They should kick him out now. This is the perfect opportunity. He liked a tweet that likened Jews to rats.
Just shocking.
It is beyond shocking. Now, I don't know whether it's because he's thick and he didn't...
Well, we know he's not.
He didn't understand that the rat emoji was used in the 30s to smear Jews. But it doesn't matter. Don't repost things when you don't know what they mean.
Right.
And you can't use ignorance as an excuse in this case. And I just think for the BBC, this is the perfect opportunity to kick him out right now. Never be on our screens again. But, you know, and if they don't, it means they're colluding with his anti-Semitism. I mean, a lot of Jewish people inside the BBC are really upset about this. And if the BBC doesn't kick him out, it's because what the corporation is then saying is that Jewish people aren't important within their...
I'll tell you what it is, it's stupid and it's lazy and it's a reductive way of looking at the world. And there is absolutely no... I don't believe that Gary Lineker is anti-Semitic.
Do you not?
But there is... No, I don't believe that
all his
he is.
Palestinian posts?
Well, this is where it gets murky, but that post absolutely is. And you have a responsibility, I think that's the key thing. If you're somebody who is as well-known and as influential and, frankly, as rich and has a role that's that as prominent as the one Gary Lineker has held for 2 decades, you have a responsibility to make sure that when you're posting or reposting something on social media, you don't accidentally let an anti-Semitic
But he has a bigger responsibility.
slip in there.
He works for a corporation that is supposed to be not biased. He has a big responsibility to the contract that the BBC works on, not to be biased.
On that point, Matthew Syed wrote a brilliant column in The Times yesterday, basically saying, actually, enough's enough, Gary. You're a really good... The first line says, Gary Lineker is an excellent presenter, but let's not pretend there aren't many others who could do his job.
Right.
And I agree with both of those.
For a lot less money.
He's an outstanding sports presenter, but other people could do it.
But I wonder, Andy, if this had been a virulently anti-Muslim post on social media, would his feet have touched the ground?
That's an interesting question, and I think you might well be right.
Don't you think, Carol?
Completely right. He would have been gone. He would have been gone a long time ago. But you know, a lot of I was reading today. A lot of Jewish people who work for the BBC feel that his anti-Semitism is being wrapped up in his support for Palestine, and they have every reason to believe that. And you know, the BBC has a duty of care to those people. And they're not doing it. They're still sticking up for a guy they're going to get rid of anyway, and they're still letting him do this nonsense. He should have been gone a long time ago.
I'm surprised he didn't know that the rat emoji was an anti-Semitic trope. I mean, he says this, let me tell you his statement. He says, on Instagram, I reposted material which I have since learned contained offensive references. I very much regret these references. I take full responsibility for this mistake. That image does not reflect my views. It was an error on my part for which I apologise unreservedly. Now, the thing that I find a little bit troubling is that he has been at pains to say in his previous interviews that he never tweets when he's had a glass of wine, that he never tweets without thinking and checking and making sure it's something he can stand by. So how does that...
This is the problem with this kind of, like, student union... social media activism. You just repost, retweet. It's really easy to do. Click of a button.
Yeah.
And you don't think about the content or the impact that it's going to have.
You just said it. When you're somebody like him,
you have a responsibility.
You have to.
I mean, he has to talk about football for a living. He must be bored. Let's be honest. Like,
if bored and rich, Bev, you should just shut up.
Yeah.
I'd swap jobs with him.
But there's also an extra responsibility on him because it's the BBC.
Well,
of course there is.
Yeah, I get
the
that.
national broadcaster, impartial,
They have their contract because of their supposed impartiality, and
and because the public we're paying his wages.
Yeah, and
their news is.
And he's been treading a really, really, really fine line for a number of years, where he's been, you know, at the helm of Match of the Day, one of the heritage programmes on the BBC, and the argument he has made is, well, it's not news, it's not current affairs, so I can sort of, you know, I can talk about who I'm going to vote for at the general election. That is, but when you're really going into issues like that and making mistakes that are that bad, I mean, it's just unforgivable.
The arrogance of it, you know, he was whinging the other day in an interview that he was cross that the BBC hadn't let him carry on to the very end of his contract. Well, you know, this would be why, these kind of tweets would be why, and this is the perfect time for them to kick him out, because there really is no excuse. You've just said he should have known. He's a grown man, and he tells us he's involved politically and he cares. He should know.
If he's going to walk away from the bit, which he is doing anyway now, isn't he? He's not
next year.
Next year. Then, you
So
know,
we've got another year of him. Got another year of him.
Throw yourself into your politics, Gary Lineker. Fantastic. Go for it. Enjoy it. If that's what you feel you want the challenge of and the stimulation intellectually to be involved in these issues, then go for it.
And he could do it. He's got the time. He's got the money.
He's got the freedom.
He's got
he will be
following
free
as
to do
well.
what he wants.
Keir Starmer would jump at him.
Can we just say we've got this hosepipe ban coming in, Andy? Apparently.
All I can say is that I think Thames Water must be the worst-run business in Britain.
I just
cannot, and it's a long list.
Teetering on the edge of bankruptcy.
Teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. I really do think it should be taken into public ownership, and not for ideological reasons, just because it's a failing enterprise that should be a state enterprise.
And Thames is the biggest water company in
This is the
Britain.
bloke who
28% of
took
our
over,
water.
and after 3 months awarded himself a £200,000 bonus.
He did.
And he said he cannot promise there won't be a hosepipe ban. We've had a year and a half of constant rain.
Yeah.
Where has all that water been stored?
Leaky pipes.
Leaky pipes.
Because they don't fix them.
And listen, talking of companies into ownership, the GB Energy Bill passed this morning
Miliband.
in the House of Parliament. So basically, Ed Miliband has now got complete control over £8 billion of money with very little scrutiny on which experimental projects he spends it on in order to achieve.
Do you remember when this government were going to cut our energy bills by £300 a year?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Well, they didn't say they'd do that in 10 months, did they?
No, but they're now saying they won't. But they're now saying they won't be able to do it in this Parliament at all.
No,
another broken promise.
And everybody, journalists, please keep an eye on where he spends that money and who benefits, and all the private companies that he will be liberally...
What we should be doing with that money is investing in technologies that could make Britain a forerunner globally in green technologies, and that would be if we get a few winners off the back of that, that'd be a good use of money.
I'd invest in this country. It doesn't make a blind bit of difference to the planet. We produce 1% of carbon emissions.
No, I know
in the
that,
world.
but that's a different
China,
argument.
32%. And it's not a different argument.
It is.
He's going to skin people in this country alive. He's going to take all their money. He's going to bankrupt people, and he's going to do it for nothing.
That's one argument. My argument is there's
We're going to go to Albania. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is hosting a joint press conference with his counterpart Edi Rama. Here they are.
This is another historic visit in Tirana following that of President Macron, who was the first president in the history of the Albanian-French relationships to visit Albania. You are the first prime minister in the history of relations between UK and Albania visiting Tirana. On a bilateral visit that we highly appreciate on the verge of the 6th summit of the European Political Summit. I wish to especially thank you for since the day I came to the London summit, because you tasked your own people to help us with their own expertise to organize the summit in Tirana, which I hope will be at the proper level tomorrow. It is an important moment in the relationships between our two countries also, because it has never happened before that we were so much in sync for two key questions. First, on the issue of Ukraine, as two countries sharing NATO membership, as well as on the issue connected to battling illicit migration and countering criminal networks that encourage such illicit migration. I believe that with regard to the latter, we have marked an exceptional progress, whilst concerning the former, considering also the overall geopolitical situation that is in turmoil, we have deepened our cooperation and are intensely working to enhance our synergies in the area of security, and particularly in that of defense. Engagement to counter criminal and illicit migration, we have reason to be proud of what we've done so far. Figures are impressive, and I would like to seize the opportunity having you here and also having the representatives of the British media to emphasize that referring to the figures of is the right thing for the British public, instead of cultivating myths, amongst others, the myth that Albanians are a problem for the UK.
Well, this is the Prime Minister alongside his Edi Rama, who is the Albanian Prime Minister. Most interesting thing so far, I would say, about this press conference is the fact, Karen Malone, Edi Rama is got to be the tallest Prime Minister in the world.
He's 6'7". He's 6'7", and Keir Starmer, I've just found out, is only 5'8".
I very much hope they do a press, like a photo shoot together, because that's going to be all the headlines tomorrow.
Not what he's saying.
There'll be a shot of them walking together, so they will have that shot of him.
Exactly, little and
tomorrow.
large. Exactly. Or do you remember during the 97 general election when David Owen had David Steele in his top pocket during one of the posters?
At least it's not Rishi, because he really was tiny.
Yeah, he was 5'4".
He was really small.
Yeah, he could have put him in his pocket.
It wasn't the most gripping television. We accept that then, hearing the translation of Edi Rama's words. Keir Starmer and this government would like you to think this is a very, very big day in terms of our illegal migration problem. Remember, this is nothing to do with legal migration, which is toppy of 500,000, 750,000, whatever it's going to be. Although we do think we're going to see a reduction, don't we?
But that will come about because of changes brought in by the Tories.
Yeah, correct.
And there was the immigration white paper the other day that did contain a number of measures that are designed to tackle legal migration.
But that will take months and months, Andy.
Of course it will, of course.
I mean, the white paper is not legislation anywhere near us.
No, I understand that.
Do you really think that this thing about having A-level English, you really think that if someone hasn't learned it after after 5 years they're going to chuck them out.
No.
We don't chuck pedos out, we don't chuck criminals out, but do you think they're going to chuck someone who can't speak A-level English
what
out?
about the human rights?
Well,
and of course, if the children might have the wrong chicken McNuggets.
Well, that's McNuggets.
Is it McNuggets? Chicken nuggets.
I was on the telly on Tuesday night with you, Andy,
Yes.
when Patrick Christie's was over in Calais.
He did brilliant work
Did
out there.
24 hours in Calais. You caused a lot of controversy, Andy, and I don't think Patrick was most thrilled with you because, well, explain why. Because you have strong opinions on the illegal migration issue, and particularly the situation around the camps.
Yeah, so look, obviously, like almost everybody else, I think the small boats crisis is a real crisis. It's a massive problem. The numbers have gone up and up and up over a number of years. I actually don't think we should be looking at this as a party political issue. It's something the country needs to solve. Labour obviously came in and said, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to solve this problem. I think that was a mistake in the sense that, you know, Rishi Sunak has already accepted that he shouldn't have used "Stop the Boats" as a slogan, because stopping the boats dead and going to zero is just not, that is not a realistic policy in the medium term. Maybe in the long term, but not in the short term. And my point is that, firstly, this is a really, really complex problem to solve. So what we're seeing here is one measure in a package of measures that are designed to get those small boats numbers down.
It's not going to work. We know it's not going to work.
Well, let's see, but the problem...
Georgia Maloney, for the last year, has been trying to make the scheme without... Not one, because of legal complications. So why does Keir Starmer, who was much less effective as a Prime Minister than Georgia Maloney, why does he think he's going to do it? And a lot of this deal is to do with Albanians who've been deported wanting to come back. That's part of the problem. That's going to be the majority of this year. It's not going to be...
It's part of it. And in fairness, one thing the Tories did do well in the latter days of the Sunak administration was get those... They identified that there were Albanian economic migrants coming to Britain. They did get those numbers down. So it shows that actually, if you're targeted...
Are not coming from Albania, they're coming from sub-Saharan Africa. That's the problem.
But the problem with this processing scheme they're announcing, it's going to cost millions.
It's going to,
Tens and tens of millions. Of course.
Yes.
But it would be for people who've had a failed asylum case.
Yep.
So then, rather than have their appeal heard here, we will apparently send them to Albania or Macedonia.
No, we won't.
But their human rights lawyer will intervene and stop them going, which is exactly what's happened in Italy, Andy.
This is where we have a fundamental disagreement, because I do think that people... I think... Well, I don't agree with that, and I do think that we should... I think we have a right and I think we have a responsibility to hear asylum cases, because while we know that many of them are not legal, we have a right to hear... We have a... I know.
And these will be cases that have been heard and rejected. This would be their appeals will be heard, allegedly.
But people have a right to an appeal. And I think international law is important.
Yeah, but what will happen is that, just as happened with Italy, the appeal won't be heard in Albania because the lawyers will tie it up in knots.
And
hang on. Prime Minister's finally speaking. He's been allowed to speak by the big bloke.
And I think that is significant and reflects the closeness of the relationship between our two countries. And I'm so pleased that, having discussed this at Blenheim in my first week or so as Prime Minister, we're able to be here together in Albania and to have this bilateral meeting as a prelude to the EPC tomorrow. Congratulations on your election win earlier this week. And it is really significant to be here in Albania to begin what I see as the next chapter of our country's strong relationship, delivering security and growth here in Europe and, of course, in the United Kingdom. But also, for me, an opportunity to see firsthand how our two countries are working together on some of the biggest challenges that we face. So this morning, as you know, I was at the port in Doris, where I saw our joint efforts to crack down on cross-border crime, law enforcement from Albania alongside law enforcement from the United Kingdom working together on joint efforts. And as I set out in a white paper on immigration that we published on Monday, secure borders are central to our plan for change. And people want and deserve an immigration system that is fair, that works for our national interest, and that restores common sense and control to our borders. So I'm grateful, Prime Minister, for your support on this and your bold leadership on the migration issues that the continent faces. our progress together on reducing small boat numbers has been significant. You just went through the numbers again. That is over a relatively short period, quite an incredible reduction. And I think it's a signal and an example of what can be done when two countries work together in this way. Our Joint Migration Task Force, as you have always emphasised, practical, sleeves rolled up, getting on with the job rather than endless memos, is working to deter illegal migration. And our prisoner transfer agreement is returning Albanian offenders to serve their time here. Together, we've supported young people to stay and build their lives and futures in Albania. The partnership between our two nations goes well beyond our cooperation to secure our borders, and we've talked about this a lot this morning. Albania is a staunch NATO ally and a key partner in Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression. That is so important at a time like this, including, of course, your support for the training of Ukrainian troops in the UK as part of Operation Interflex. And I've been to see that training a number of times. It is truly humbling and really important example of nations, like-minded nations, working together to a common cause. To that end, I'm delighted to announce the enhanced UK-Albania strategic partnership. Now, this partnership will boost our cooperation across defence and security. It will deter irregular migration and cross-border criminal activity, and, on top of that, maximise our potential for investment, infrastructure and growth, particularly in our vital defence industries. Which is why I'm also pleased to announce a joint statement of intent on defence industry cooperation. We will work together on the manufacture and sale of military vehicles, so another important step forward for our two countries, strengthening our national security, driving innovation and boosting economic growth for both of our nations. Now, this is a moment for European countries to step up and stand firm against Russian aggression on the continent. And later today, I will be visiting Albanian and UK troops who are working together to defend our freedoms and citizens, because the battle lines of Ukraine are the front lines of Western values. And for this bilateral meeting to be bookended by examples of our joint work on law enforcement and our joint work on troops and what we're doing in relation to Ukraine, I think is very strong evidence of the way that we are working so effectively together. But it is that defence of Ukraine that will continue, the UK will continue to lead in our efforts to support Ukraine. I am really grateful for Albania's steadfast partnership in that fight, showing leadership around the world in hosting the EPC tomorrow, where we get the opportunity to discuss this very issue in the context of European security. And we are sending a strong message at this critical moment that Europe stands united, strong abroad, secure at home, putting money in working people's pockets and deepening our partnerships with our European allies for the benefit of the people in the United Kingdom. As I say, it's a privilege to be here for this first visit. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Questions?
Mohamed Veliu.
Mohamed Veliu from Top Channel.
Questions when we're now be coming in from the assembled press there. Our very own Chris Hope is there, our political editor, so he'll be getting a question at some point. Just to remind you, he has done a sit-down exclusive interview with the Prime Minister, which we'll be broadcasting after midday, or certainly when this press conference ends, although knowing Starmer, the press conference will drag on a bit.
What struck me there, Andy Williams and Carol Malone are still with us, was he's meant to be there talking about how he's going to solve the boats crisis. And yet he just seems to want to cast himself all the time, Carol, as this militaristic Prime Minister.
Yes.
He's still there talking about Ukraine.
Ukraine's and weapons, and that's why, because he thinks that we regard him as a statesman in that respect, and we don't. But he's not talking about the one problem he can't and refuses to solve, which is illegal immigration. He's supposed to be talking about how this deal with Albania is going to stop the illegal crossings. It's not. I mean, his other plan, you know, which I read about this morning, which made me laugh out loud, drones. He's going to send drones over to identify the smugglers. And then what's he going to do? Unless the drone can arrest the smuggler, it's not going to happen because he's going to be gone.
I thought you were going to say shoot them then, Carol.
Well, no, unless he can arrest them and put them in jail. It's pointless.
She's absolutely right, though, Andy. It all feels very much performative in terms of this issue rather than getting anything done.
I do think there's something in the fact that Starmer thinks that he sees that where he's had success so far is on the international stage, building relationships with other leaders, on diplomacy, and I think he's trying to apply that to every aspect of his role as Prime Minister.
It gave him a tiny lift in the polls for about 5 minutes, yes. Andy, about 1 or 2%, and if you look at his poll ratings now, they are dire.
No, they're not. I mean, his approval ratings are appalling.
Minus 38%, and lower than Badenoch's, lower than anybody's.
But I was just saying to Bev, you know, they are absolutely his team in number 10 at the moment are flailing. They just don't know what's going to hit them next. They're finding it so much harder than they thought they would to get a grip on things. And I think they're just going from one thing to the other. And this month's kind of strategy is he's a statesman. Let's present him in that way. But it's not going to hold. Not if we can't actually make a progression on domestic measures.
It's not being in tune with the people of this country, not understanding what is upsetting them. You know, what is upsetting them actually isn't legal immigration, although it's huge. That's not what's incensing them. What's incensing them...
Well, I think that does incense people as well, though. I mean, that's what drove partly the Brexit vote, no?
People are coming onto our shores, giving us the two fingers, going, hey, I'm here. Yeah. You're going to pay for me now.
It's sort of symbolic. It's symbolic of this government's failure, the last government's failure, and despite all the talk, as you say, Karen says, those photographs the other day on the front of all the newspapers, that migrant effectively saying up yours.
Yes, yes,
If I was Keir Starmer, and thank God I'm not, I'd go back into number 10 today and I'd say, right, remember we've got this enormous majority and we've got 4 years left, and I'd say we're going to do some really radical things on welfare reform. We're going to totally get a grip on the benefits bill.
Look what he's trying to do that.
You tried to do it. The 5 billion doesn't touch the sides.
He's not going to do that again.
We should do some really radical things with the justice system and overhaul that. We should look at the tax system and blow that up and get rid of national insurance and call it what it is, which is income tax. And we should, you know, all of these things.
How can we do any of that? You just said, you know, before, in the break before, you just said that, you know, we don't have any jails. The only way to mend the justice system is to send criminals to jail. He can't do that because there's no spaces to put anybody. He can't.
Well, he's letting them out.
All of those things you've just mentioned, he's had a go at. He's tried with the welfare system and he tickled with that, and his own party went nuts.
But that's exactly. I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's my point. He's at the edges of all of these issues, and I think he needs a reset where he can really properly tackle them and realise that he's
not a leader, and he can't stand out on his own. Leaders can say, I don't care what you all say, this is what I'm doing. It's what Trump does. He doesn't listen to people. He's got an instinct and he does what he thinks right. Starmer hasn't.
Can I just give you an interesting fact? What salary do you think the Albanian Prime Minister earns a year? Bear in mind, our Prime Minister's on about 180.
It's either going to be loads more or loads less.
Have a guess.
300k.
300,000. Have a guess.
Oh, I think it's probably less. I think it's probably better.
I reckon he's on 1.2 million.
Oh, I don't know. Well, you've done me now. I'm just going to say something stupid then, 500.
Try 17,294
yes, that's right. I mean,
there we are. Isn't that amazing?
Of course, then.
Yeah.
Because
it's a very, very poor country, and he pays and that is extraordinary fact, isn't it?
He's on
17,294 pounds a year.
Everyone else is on about 1,500.
There it is.
But I wonder if he's a wealthy man pre-politics.
Yeah. So his daily wages are £66 a day. I'm not going to. I don't want to be Prime Minister of Albania.
Mind you, everything costs a lot less.
Yes, of course it does.
In Albania.
Well, I'm going to just Google the average salary, but that is the most interesting. That is interesting.
It's probably about 12 grand. So
yeah.
Well, where's he go? Well, you know what? They've got a lot of money coming their way now. He might put his salary up, mightn't he, once he gets all our money to process all these asylum seekers. The detail of this deal will emerge as the afternoon goes on, of course, here on GB News. And as Andrew said, we have got this exclusive sit-down interview that Christopher Hope has done in Albania with the Prime Minister. And who knows, it might be music to your ears. It might be that the solution has now been uncovered to the small boats.
We're not holding on.
We're sceptical. We are sceptical. We are sceptical. However, they're trying. But of course, With Rwanda, when they were going to land here, Andy, and be taken straight to Rwanda. That's not going to happen with this plan at all.
This is a different plan, and in some ways, it's completely different. And in some ways, I think it could be better. But let's just see. Let's wait for the detail.
When they arrive on these shores, it's going to be a long time, if ever, before they take.
They should have tried. They should have tried.
Oh, Chopper's asking a question. Let's go back to Albania.
For migrants to arrive illegally in the UK, is that right, or are you willing to have this model for the UK to support our attempt at dealing with this illegal migration crisis? And to you, Sir Keir Starmer, you are in talks about return hubs. We've learnt that today with a number of countries. Which countries are you talking to? And when will the first migrants be sent overseas to be processed? And will it see migrant hotels emptying more quickly than currently?
Yes, you got it right. I have been very clear since day one when we started this process with Italy that this was a one-off with Italy because of our very special relation, but also because of the geographical situation, which makes a lot of sense. And to be very frank with you, we have been asked by several countries if we were open to it, and we said no, because we are loyal to the marriage with Italy, and the rest is just love.
Chris, in relation to your question to me, yes, we are in talks with a number of countries about return hubs, and I see them as a really important innovation, and that is consistent with the work that we've done in relation to UK-Albania reduction in numbers, the work that we've done on law enforcement arrangements with other countries, the return agreements that we've put in place, the record number of returns, and what I'd like to do is add return hubs to that. We are in those talks, and therefore at the appropriate time I'll be able to give you further details in relation to it. In relation to the asylum hotels, I think it's really important to be absolutely clear as to why we have the problem that we have, and that is because the last government ran an open borders experiment, and on top of that didn't process the claims of asylum seekers, and therefore tens of thousands of asylum seekers in the UK were in limbo because they weren't processed, they couldn't be sent back, or dealt with if their application was successful. They're literally an ever-expanding pool put into hotels at taxpayers' expense. And that is the inheritance, the mess that we have to pick up. The way through that is obviously to do the work that we're doing to stop people coming illegally to the United Kingdom, which is why this summit, the work we've done with Albania and other countries is so vitally important, but also to process the claims so we can return people who shouldn't be in the United Kingdom. And I'm really pleased that we've rolled up our sleeves, got on, and now returned 24,000 people who had no right to be in the United Kingdom. That's the highest number for nearly 10 years, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris McKeon, Press Association. A question to both of you.
So that was Starmer speaking at the press conference, replying to our very own Christopher Hope, who, of course, has done an interview with the Prime Minister, which will be, you can listen to, watch after 12. Caroline and Andy Williams still here. How do you think the Prime Minister's doing?
Well, I couldn't hear myself because it's turned down here, so I couldn't hear it. But
right. Probably didn't miss much. I don't think you missed much.
As we said before, he was talking about Ukraine. I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth about immigration or anything. I mean, so whatever he says, I just don't believe it's going to happen. I don't.
This is meant to be their reaction to the Reform success in the council elections. They know that Reform are the biggest threat at the next general election.
They certainly do.
Is he winning that, Andy Williams?
Not yet, but this is why I think that there's a massive reset required in number 10. You know, it's clearly, even the most dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporter is not going to argue that it's going well. We need a big reset. We need to realise that they've got a massive majority, and 4 years is a long time, and there's a lot to do.
And what they'll do is they'll do a reshuffle. They'll sack poor old Lisa Nandy and what she's done.
But when I say
it's
the thing.
It needs more than that, doesn't it?
If they're tempted to just shuffle the deck chairs around, that is not going to cut it. It's like a mindset shift.
This guy has no political nous or intuition, Starmer. He doesn't know which way to go. He takes advice from not very smart people who don't have their finger on the pulse of this country.
If that's the case, he needs to get out of the way.
He doesn't believe in anything. That's the real problem.
And we have to get out of the way now, unfortunately, as well. We're going to be the weather, but don't forget, Britain's Good Afternoon Britain will be after your weather with a packed show. See you next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. High pressure is now returning across the whole of the UK, having seen scattered thundery downpours in the last few days. That means widespread sunny skies and feeling warm in the sunshine, but it will be a little cloudier and cooler in places. Certainly first thing, some cloud across central and southern parts of the UK. That tends to retreat back to the east coast by the afternoon. And on that east coast, it's always going to feel a lot cooler because of the wind from the North Sea and the low cloud that will come and go through the afternoon. 12 to 15 Celsius from eastern Scotland down to Norfolk. But elsewhere where we've got sunshine, high teens, low 20s, top temperatures something like 23 Celsius, South Wales or southwest England. And we keep the widespread clear skies as we end the day. Certainly virtually unbroken clear blue skies across Scotland as we go into the afternoon and early evening. Northern Ireland, barely a cloud in sight, likewise for northwest England. But for the east coast, you can see that patchy cloud persisting into the evening. Wales, as well as the south and southwest, it's a fine end to the day and continuing to feel warm even as the sun goes down. Now, the cloud in the east, it's a fickle beast. It'll come and go through the night time. Some of it will appear across the Midlands, perhaps reach parts of East Wales and central southern England. So, yeah, some patchy cloud here and there overnight. And as we wake up on Friday, a few places will be overcast, I suspect. It will also feel cool with that brisk breeze continuing down the North Sea coast. But most of the cloud will retreat back to the beaches of eastern England as well as the northeast of Scotland. It's cloud-free skies elsewhere and under the sunshine, high UV levels, but also high temperatures, 22 or 23 Celsius in the southwest. Again, mid-teens in that east coast.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of May. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Miriam Kate.
Well, it's a big day in Albania for the Prime Minister. He's talking about offshore processing, return hubs, a crackdown on immigration. But we've got an exclusive interview.
With Christopher Hope, our political editor. He's been speaking to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Let's see what he had to say.
Sir Keir Starmer, thank you for joining us today on GB News. Great to see you. In 2020, you said you want to make a wider case for immigration, make the case for the benefits of migration. How can GB News viewers believe you when you say you're concerned about it now?
Well, I've always said that our country should be able to walk forward into the future in a way which is bringing our communities together, our neighbours together. And that's why I'm clear that we shouldn't be an island of strangers. Actually, the way forward for our country is to go forward as one country facing the challenges of the future, as neighbours, as communities, but not as strangers. And my fear is that the, frankly, loss of control over the last 4 years by the last government, with the massive increase in the number of net migration, up to nearly 1 million, that's quadrupled in 4 years. That is an incredible loss of control by the government. I think it's really important that we now take firm, effective action to bring those numbers down, which is why we published our white paper, which covers all aspects of migration,
the language there
and takes back control of our borders.
Your language on strangers, island of strangers, was language some say used by Enoch Powell. So how do you respond to the left-wing MPs saying you're adopting Powell-like language, a dog whistle almost?
Well, that's a complete nonsense. My values are about how we bring our country together. I've always believed in the patriotism that Labour has long embodied as a political